Soaring cocoa prices are driving up the cost of chocolate, while a supply and demand imbalance is causing beef prices to skyrocket. All around the world, food is getting more expensive. Extreme weather, disease, and rising energy costs are straining producers, and new tariffs are adding more pressure to supply chains, all while demand for certain foods keeps growing. We look at 15 foods to understand why they're so expensive, starting with a cut of beef that's exploded in popularity, but was once considered a throwaway.
This bony cut of beef has become a hot commodity. It's called oxtail, and it goes for around $14 a pound. About the same price as a pound of sirloin steak, but for a lot less meat.
I'm selling out of oxtail like every week. I can't keep up.
But that wasn't always the case. For a long time, oxtail was considered a throwaway cut of beef in the United States. As recently as 2 decades ago, it only cost a few dollars per pound.
Back then, in early 2000, nobody wanted it.
So what changed?
The reputation of oxtail is as high as it's ever been.
Now, prices have skyrocketed for everyone. And some who've been eating oxtail all along aren't happy about the hike.
Oxtail prices are just getting out of hand, fam. We're not about it.
An online movement has started to make oxtail cheap again. Business Insider even found itself in the middle of the viral controversy. So why is oxtail suddenly so expensive? And what does the increasing price mean for people who've been eating oxtail for generations? Finding oxtail on menus in the United States was rare just a couple decades ago. Pat LaFrida's family's butcher shop in New Jersey has been selling the cut since it opened in 1922. He says that in the past, the cut of beef never got much attention from restaurants. Most of his oxtail sales came from Latin American, Asian, and Caribbean communities who have cooked with it for generations.
There are many cultures that focus in on the oxtail because at one time, it was an economy cut.
One big reason oxtail was considered a throwaway is that it has a lot less meat than other cuts of beef. That's because it's mostly bone and fat, with only about 40% usable meat. To get the same amount of meat as 1 pound of another cut of beef, like sirloin steak, you'd need 2.5 pounds of oxtail.
So when you really calculate how much meat you have for poundage of product, it's not much.
Still, those eating oxtail back then knew it wasn't like any other cut of beef.
The flavor is so distinctive. You can close your eyes, probably put your blindfold on, you will know that it's oxtail.
Oxtail is high in collagen and is more gelatinous than most other cuts of beef. The collagen breaks down when it's cooked and gives the meat a buttery melt-in-your-mouth texture.
I love oxtails. If they cook correctly, not everybody can cook oxtails. And if you season it right, oh my God, it'll last in your mouth for days.
It really is the pearl of the animal. But because it's so succulent and because it's so spoon tender once cooked, there's no mistaking that for any other cut in the animal.
And while oxtail wasn't widely in demand in the US, the story was much different in Jamaica, where food lovers have long known the value of the bony beef.
I don't know if it's a bone or something, but most overseas, they come to Jamaica just for the oxtail.
O'Shea Williams learned how to cook traditional Jamaican oxtail stew when he was a child.
It's not to be prepared like any other way.
Today, it's one of the best-selling dishes at his seaside restaurant, O'Shea's 876 Kitchen in Port Antonio, Jamaica. The dish dates back to the island's colonial era, when enslaved Africans were given unwanted animal parts like oxtail to eat. Using their ancestral cooking techniques and local spices, they turned it into a flavorful stew that's now a staple of Jamaican cuisine. The oxtail is typically chopped into 1-inch pieces and seasoned with fresh spices.
First we're gonna start with the garlic. We're gonna start with the onion next. Some scallion. We're gonna start with the pepper. Scotch bonnet pepper. Scotch bonnet add the spice. Like hot.
The meat is then slow cooked over an open fire for hours until it falls off the bone.
Really good. Everything is right. Look at spice. Very nice.
While oxtail was always somewhat of a luxury in Jamaica, the prices O'Shea is seeing today are way higher than before. That's because there's more demand in the U.S. 41% of meat imported to Jamaica comes from the U.S., including oxtail. So if prices are up stateside, they're up in Jamaica too.
I might have to raise price because the things are really getting high. I believe that oxtail price will never drop. It's always been going up and up and up.
Oxtail's popularity in the U.S. has been on the rise since the mid-2010s, but it really spiked during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. As supply chain issues drove up beef prices in America, consumers searching for cheaper meat turned to cuts like oxtail. But oxtail was never meant to have such a high demand. Oxtail only makes up 4 to 6 pounds of a cow, compared to the hundreds of pounds of the other beef cuts. This limited supply, combined with growing demand, has more than doubled U.S. oxtail prices over the past decade, from $6 in 2015 to $14 in 2024. Today, Pat says oxtail is the most expensive he's ever seen it.
The demand for it is as high as it's ever been.
To understand just how much the price has jumped, we visited Chef Judith Abel at Swirl Wine Bistro in South Florida. She makes an oxtail ravioli that costs more than double what it used to.
When we first opened Swirl, on the menu, it was under $20 for the dish.
Today, it costs $48. Oxtail was one of Judith's favorite dishes growing up as a child in Jamaica.
I can remember maybe around 10 having oxtail. It was so good, oh my goodness. It's always an upscale family meal. For better holidays, you'll get some oxtail. People are coming over to your house on a Sunday, you'll cook oxtail.
It wasn't until she moved to the U.S. in 1986 that she realized just how inexpensive the cut of meat was outside of the island.
It was like $1 and change. We were cooking oxtail at my sister's house because, oh my goodness, oxtail is like so cheap here.
But as the price of oxtail rises, she can barely make a profit from it.
There was a point where we were like, yeah, we're not putting it on the menu. So we had stopped serving it for a while. Right now we have to cap it because how much can you sell, ravioli for? But for now, I'm just making it out of love.
With a $48 oxtail ravioli dish, it's safe to say consumers are feeling the impact.
Oxtail prices are just getting out of hand, fam.
That's Jamaican comedian Marlon Palmer. In 2016, he sparked an online movement bringing awareness to rising oxtail prices with the hashtag #MakeOxtailCheap Again. It all started when he saw the price of an oxtail entree at his local Jamaican restaurant in Toronto start to rise.
I went to Albert's and I looked at the price and I was like, this is not the normal price. And so I made a Instagram story or like a Snapchat or something, and I was like, "Can you look at this?
$20 for a large oxtail in a tin? What is that?"
And at the time, Trump was running on his "Make America Great Again" campaign. So I was like, "Make oxtail cheap again. This is what we need to be campaigning for."
The hashtag quickly garnered thousands of mentions all over social media, with longtime oxtail lovers sharing their experiences.
Through doing it, I realized how many people felt the same way but just weren't saying anything. It's that sense of community. We're all in on the joke. We all know what's at stake here, and we're treating it like this dire situation that's not dire, but to our community, it's dire.
Business Insider found itself in the middle of the controversy. In 2023, our food page reposted a video about oxtail on Twitter, garnering over 36 million views and thousands of reposts. In the replies, oxtail lovers like Marlon tried their best to steer people away from their favorite food, jokingly claiming that consuming it could cause severe ailments and even death.
I kept putting like the vomit emoji and telling people yucky. Anytime someone would bring that up, I was like, you eat that? And like just making it seem grotesque. Cause like at a certain point, propaganda is the only thing that's gonna save us. We gotta start lying to these people. I'm pretty sure that worked on a couple hundred people. Any little bit makes a difference, man. Any little bit.
But behind the jokes, there's still some real concern among OG oxtail fans.
I think there's anger that it got out because we found a way to make what other people think was trash treasure. I think that's what really connects us to it. Like, we had it in-house for so long, nobody knew how great this was, and then the internet just propelled it to new heights.
But the debate isn't only about price. There's also the question of the right way to make oxtail.
Them like new stuff, yes, they like try new stuff, but after a while them try the new stuff, then automatically I go come back to the old stuff, because they're not going to have the taste that what they're going looking for. No way.
Feels like a trend because like you see it in like oxtail tacos, oxtail syrup, oxtail cereal, and they have now remixed it 500,000 times into different concoctions that I do not approve of. It's a mess now. It's gone overboard, and that's part of why I think the price has gone up as well.
This way of thinking puts Judith and her oxtail ravioli in an awkward position.
Because I'm Jamaican chef, they have this expectation. Oh, we're going to a restaurant that is a Jamaican chef. Oh, they have oxtail on the menu. They're expecting it to be on the bone, the traditional way. I worked in England, Wales, Switzerland. All of these experiences influence how I cook. How could I just cook oxtail the same old way? Of course, I'm going to find another way to cook it.
To make the dish, she starts by trimming excess fat from the oxtail and browning it on all sides. The key to making oxtail tender is cooking it slowly at a low temperature in a flavorful stock. Once it's done, the meat is fall off the bone tender. Due to oxtail's long cooking time, making a batch of ravioli takes Judith 2 days. But Judith says she can't achieve the same flavor with any other cut of beef.
It had to be the oxtail.
Judith cooks the oxtail again for another 4 hours in more wine and beef stock.
Well, that's gonna cook down. And the reduction of this oxtail is what we're gonna use as the filling for the ravioli.
When Judith first considered adding oxtail to the menu at her restaurant, ravioli wasn't her first choice. Her goal was to pay homage to her Jamaican heritage while also distinguishing herself as a chef.
I mean, there's a lot of Jamaican restaurants that you can go and get traditional Jamaican food. We want to set ourselves apart.
It took years of trial and error to come up with this dish. Today, the oxtail ravioli is a customer favorite at Swirl.
We had to put it on the door, home of the oxtail ravioli. I'm selling out of oxtail like every week. I can't keep up.
While she is concerned about the price hikes, she says it shouldn't stop her or other chefs from creating innovative oxtail dishes.
There will always be a chef who's going to try to take it to the next level. I've seen chefs smoke it and then braise it. I've seen chefs who slow smoke it for days and so it's falling off the bone. Have at it, be creative.
Today, Pat LaFrida delivers oxtail to all kinds of chefs and restaurants, including high-end ones. Despite many people's fears, Pat insists there's still plenty of oxtail to go around.
Unless there's some evolutionary issue with cattle, it's never going to disappear.
As long as the demand for oxtail is there, people are going to buy it, and people are buying at a higher price anyway. They may not buy as much, but they're still buying it because it's like it's in our system at this point.
Another food facing a supply shortage is kogo from Ghana. That means higher chocolate prices, or in some cases, chocolate bars with less cocoa.
Joseph Sasu starts harvesting his 17 acres of cocoa in the central region of Ghana in October. Inside this healthy pod are the pearly white cocoa beans that will become chocolate. But in the last few years, Joseph has been finding more sick pods like this, completely black or covered in white fuzz. They've been infected with an incurable virus called swollen shoot. Tiny mealybugs spread the virus as they feed on the sap of the cocoa trees. Once it takes hold, the leaves can become discolored or die back. Stems might swell, and smaller pods may form. After a few years, swollen shoot can kill the plant. Ghana and Ivory Coast grow more than half of the world's cocoa crop. But for the third straight season, there hasn't been enough cocoa to meet global demand. This year, farmers are projected to harvest over 700,000 metric tons less than the previous season. Now, nearly a third of cocoa farmland in Ghana is infected.
Last year, so it was more. Into cocoa, so after all, say, a cocoa base, 20 bars of crano. Make us half the two.
The only way to stop the spread is by cutting down the infected trees and planting new ones, which can take 4 years to grow fruit.
Imagine from a smallholder's perspective, you're faced with a choice of eliminating your potential to earn an income, or keeping that tree going for as long as you can.
That's Christy Liesel, a 20-year veteran chocolate scholar.
The longer you keep a tree around with swollen shoot virus, the more chance it has to spread to surrounding trees.
Joseph has already removed about 1,500 infected trees within the last 5 years.
Because we have no line, cocoa do a meet much cocoa do every a debate 100 years. I am a nana and more any years I cocoa.
Another problem is that Ghana's land is also rich in gold. And more illegal mining operations called Galamsey have been taking up land that used to grow cocoa trees. These miners have been known to intimidate farmers into selling their land. Sometimes they'll take over farms without asking at all. That's what happened to Janet. Armed guards kept her out while miners cut down nearly all of her 6,000 trees to dig gold. They left her land barren and poisoned.
Over and over again, I have had cocoa farmers really on the verge of tears, explaining to me that they are no longer able to sell cocoa even if they've retained their own land.
Galamsey has been growing since the 2000s. Many illegal mines are operated by Chinese companies that have brought in equipment to speed up production and convert farms faster. And more cocoa farms are selling their land in part due to an economic crisis that sent inflation skyrocketing to 54% in 2022.
We know that cocoa farmers are very often constrained for cash. This may look like an attractive option if you are really stuck.
Joseph has refused to sell to Galamsey, even though his trees have been struggling. Parts of Ghana are facing their worst drought in 40 years. Other parts of the country have dealt with heavy rainfall that spoiled beans. Last year, Joseph made less than $1,800 from his farm. And while cocoa prices are spiking globally because of the shortage, farmers aren't necessarily benefiting from that. That's because they have to sell every single bean they grow to the country's cocoa board, known as the Cocoa Board. The organization was created in 1947 to protect farmers from volatile global prices. At the beginning of each season, Cocoa Board sets the price it will pay farmers for their beans. When the price goes down globally, farmers still get the set amount from COCOBOD. But if the price goes up, they won't benefit from that. COCOBOD is the only organization allowed to market and export Ghana's beans. Its biggest clients are the world's largest chocolate companies, mostly in Europe and North America. COCOBOD negotiates contracts with these companies to deliver beans months in the future. That's called the futures market. Because of the shortages, cocoa beans reached a record $12,000 per metric ton in April 2024 on the futures market, more than 5 times what farmers were making then. So some farmers started turning to the black market, selling their crops to smugglers who could pay them more. In an attempt to stop that, COCOBOD in September increased what it pays farmers to about $3,000 per metric ton. Cocoa's future price has dropped since April, but it's still about double what it was a year ago. It's a price cocoa processors in Ghana are struggling to pay. Most of West Africa's beans don't stay on the continent. They're exported to the US and Europe, where large multinational corporations turn the beans into valuable chocolate bars.
If you look at the value chain of cocoa, money is made in the finished product.
Lloyd oversees Niche, which roasts and grinds beans. It's one of only about a dozen companies set up to process cocoa in Ghana because it's so expensive to do it. Lloyd's been pushing to keep more chocolate production inside his country.
We are not consuming our own raw material, so we are pushing for the consumption of our chocolate in Africa.
This year, that goal got harder. Niche and most Ghanaian factories had to stall production at some point in 2023 because they couldn't afford beans. Despite being much closer to farms, Ghanaian processors have to pay the same price as foreign companies when buying beans from COCOBOD. For now, almost all of Lloyd's business is making semi-finished products like cocoa butter and cocoa mass. But he wants to make more finished chocolate bars.
I'm not going to pride myself in shipping chocolates to Europe. No. I want my chocolate to be consumed in Africa.
The cocoa crop took hold in Ghana in the 1870s. Around the same time, the British declared the southern region a colony and began invading north. In the century that followed, cocoa production exploded. Locals owned and ran all the small farms, but the raw product was almost exclusively exported to Europe.
A lot of what we know today as contemporary chocolate really grew out of this trading relationship between Ghana and Britain, including the flavor of chocolate itself.
Although Ghana gained its independence in 1957, it still exports most of its beans abroad, with half ending up in Europe. This has left West Africa with just 5% of the $200 billion chocolate industry, despite it growing about 3/4 of the world's cocoa. And the global surge in price this year has made it even harder for Ghana to change that.
This really is a setback with the whole agenda. Last 2 years, the outputs even from these artisanal chocolate makers have also had a nosedive.
Michael runs Fair Afrique, a chocolate maker in Amanasi, Ghana. While he had to dish out a lot more cash for beans, he didn't have to shut down or pause production.
We had to make tough decisions as a company to still stay afloat.
When we filmed with him 2 years ago, Fair Afrique was focused on making finished chocolate bars, pumped into molds in temperature-controlled rooms. But to stay afloat, Michael has pivoted to making chocolate drops, which he sells mostly in Europe to the baking and ice cream industries.
We are doing up to 60% of the container space for just drops. As we stand right now, we are completely sold out for chocolate drops for next year.
Michael is also focusing on countries like South Africa, which has less competition from big chocolate makers. So how is all of this affecting prices and production in the US? One of New York City's oldest chocolate houses had to cut costs too.
Well, we use a high percentage of cocoa in our product, right? And so I think that's why we're probably getting hit harder.
Anthony Cerrone co-owns the century-old company Lilac Chocolates. He buys these 10-pound blocks from Cargill in Minnesota, one of the world's largest chocolate processors.
We melt it down, we temper it, and we use it as an ingredient in our recipes. We renewed our chocolate contract this year. Our prices were up 62% versus last year. As you can imagine, that was a big hit.
Anthony had to raise prices on a few items in March, but most of his sweets haven't seen an increase.
We made the decision to, accept lower margins through the season. That means through Christmas. Some of our items, we haven't taken a price increase for 2 years. And despite the chocolate prices, we decided not to.
Luckily, the company saw a 9% increase in sales this year, which has helped. And Anthony hopes he'll see another bump this fall and holiday season.
We're in Halloween season now, but the day after Halloween, Thanksgiving items are going to show up. So we're making items like our turkeys. This one's 13.5 pounds. Yeah, it's 8 pounds, almost 9.
To make these huge sculptures, workers paint on colorful details with dyed white chocolate.
So they'll do one color, put it in the cooler, bring it out, do the second color, and so forth.
They build them up from this fountain for the shell. Lilac has about 1,000 specialty molds in its collection.
The Empire State Building, a chocolate pizza slice. These are very popular. We have a car collection. Here we have whales. And we make these delicious chocolate high heels that come painted. And we also make these chocolate handbags.
But more than half of the company's store sales come from treats in the cases. Nonpareils, truffles, chocolate-covered pretzels. Workers pipe, unmold, and package, each one by hand.
Everything that we do here is old school. There's a lot of labor involved.
The Brooklyn factory makes 175,000 pounds of chocolate a year and has followed the same recipe since the 1920s.
Almond bark is probably our #1 best-selling product of everything that we make. It's got 2 ingredients, chocolate and almonds.
Still, Anthony isn't sure he'll be able to hold pricing on these handmade products if cocoa gets more expensive.
If chocolate prices continue to go up next year, that's going to affect our business, and at some point we'll probably have to take price increases, but we're trying to hold off as long as we can.
Multinational chocolate companies are also pivoting.
The big companies have more options for managing that price increase. Use less cocoa in their products. Put other stuff into your products. Nuts, marshmallows.
In 2020, Mondelez dropped the size of many of its Cadbury chocolate bar multi-packs. In 2019, Hershey's cut down its 18-ounce Kisses pack by almost 2 ounces. Hershey's also launched a new chocolate frosted donut Kit Kat that's just dipped in chocolate, not completely coated, and a Reese's cup filled with caramel as well as peanut butter. In 2023, Nestle shrunk its fun-sized Kit Kat bars by 17% in Australia. Mars Wrigley slimmed down its Galaxy chocolate bar in the UK by 10 grams. We visited Mars Wrigley's chocolate factory in Topeka, Kansas, which makes Snickers, Milky Ways, and peanut M&Ms.
It's a pressure, but it goes through cycles like every other commodity.
Tim LaBelle, Mars Wrigley's chief Halloween officer, yes, that's his real title, maintains that the company hasn't touched its recipes in the US.
Before we pass on a price increase to a consumer, we look at every possible angle to take costs out of the system in a responsible way.
The company said it can turn to cutting manufacturing and material costs when cocoa prices go up. Mars Wrigley says it has increased its suggested pricing for retailers.
Like any company, there's been pricing over the last couple of years, done in a way where we believe it's a responsible way to do it.
When we visited the factory, it was producing enough candy each day to stretch about 120 miles.
This year, we are going to make the most Halloween candy that we've ever made in Topeka.
Mars's Topeka factory gets the majority of its cocoa from West Africa and makes 1.5 million pounds of chocolate in-house every week. Its Milky Ways are nougat and caramel enrobed in chocolate.
Our Three Musketeers Milky Way line, it's actually our largest and longest fill bar line in the world for Mars Wrigley.
Mars Snickers are milk chocolate filled with caramel and peanuts. And while regular M&Ms are mostly milk chocolate, the peanut ones are mostly, nuts.
Every day, we roast enough peanuts that equal to the weight of a fire truck.
The peanuts get coated in chocolate and then covered in a colorful candy shell made of sugar.
Yeah, a lot of people believe that the color of the M&M makes the flavor change, but really it doesn't. They're the exact same flavor in all the colors.
While workers aren't allowed to taste test straight off the line, they can do visual checks every hour.
They're making sure that the product is the right size, the right shape, the right decorations, has M's on them, that the colors are right. And if something looks wrong, all of our associates have the authority to shut the line down.
A meter makes sure each bag is getting the right amount of each color.
My wife is never sick of me bringing home chocolate or coming home smelling like chocolate.
But Mars Wrigley is seeing a trend that could bring some hope.
We have some of our fastest growing items in the fruity section.
In its annual report, the company found that while chocolate was still its favorite, gummies, fruit, and sour candies were more popular among younger generations.
We're very fortunate where we have 3 platforms for our fruity business. We have Lifesavers, Starburst, and Skittles. Sours is a big thing right now, so we're looking to introduce sour-based products in the gummy area.
Mars Wrigley also found that younger customers like variety. So the company launched these packs for Halloween, which include both chocolate and gummies.
So I think we're well positioned to take on any headwinds or tailwinds that come our way.
But what does all this mean for customers? Well, besides maybe a little less cocoa in your chocolate bar, you might also have to shell out some extra cash. Hershey's and Cadbury have also raised prices, meaning your money might not go as far to fill up your Halloween bucket this year.
The best thing you can do is to prepare your expectations for some kind of change. That may be fewer bars on shelves, it may mean that your best loved chocolate candy looks a little bit different. I think we have been living with this chocolate as an everyday luxury for generations now. So I think that it is probably wise for people to start thinking of chocolate as something a little bit more precious than we have done in the past.
Another food in high demand is this purple fruit. And in the US, TikTok is driving the craze.
In India, the largest producer of the fruit in 2022, a kilo of mangosteen costs $4. But in the US, just one fruit can go for $6. Even the saplings the nursery grows from the seeds of unsellable mangosteens are flying off the shelves. The global demand is so high that farmers in India are doing everything they can to grow more, including wiping their farms of other produce to plant more mangosteen trees, all for a fruit that couldn't be legally imported into the US from Asia until 2007. But stateside vendors told Business Insider they've been finding ways to get their hands on the fruit for decades. So does demand go beyond TikTok-worthy visuals? And why is this purple fruit so expensive? Some describe mangosteen as sweet and tangy, with notes of lychee, peach, and strawberry. Others can't quite figure out how to describe it.
It's an emotion. If you eat, you will understand. I can't explain the taste.
Street vendors in New York City, like Lee, have been selling mangosteen for decades, even when it was contraband.
因为我们听说是2007年美国才有那个山竹，它不出都30年前就有了吗？当然有啦。
In the early 2000s, a kilo could cost about $120 in New York, a little over $9 for a single fruit. Part of the reason for that staggering rate was a total ban on mangosteens grown outside of Central America and the Caribbean. Mangosteens are mainly grown in Southeast Asia, but until 2007, the USDA restricted imports, fearing pests like the Asian fruit fly would harm US agriculture. Even so, Lee says he found ways to get a hold of some.
以前是泰国来的嘛，他来的很小就买，很快买掉了。你看他看不到是这样吗？是不是？现在多一点了，你就天天看到。
Thanks to the lift on the import ban, more mangosteens are reaching the US, which has lowered the price. Today, Lee is selling a kilogram for $22, but other vendors charge as much as $78. And as more mangosteens have made their way to the US, vendors have also seen demand grow.
现在计算这么发达，他有这个看到视频了，他有看到来旅游看到东西了，他就买了。
Sweet 在卖山竹的时候有很多人买吗？
很多很多，好多东西一杀就买完了。
It's not just an American phenomenon. As global demand keeps rising, mangosteen farmers in Asia are doing everything they can to increase production. One way farmers are trying to meet that demand is by simply growing more. Merlin Muthidar Nursery in Kerala, South India, decided to cut down its other fruits in favour of mangosteens.
Right now we are cutting all coconuts, we are only promoting this mangosteen because we have profit in this, that much demand we have right now.
Mangosteens currently make up 50% of the farm's profits, so Manu says it's the right investment.
Future is fruitful, I feel like that.
Other farmers like Shaju are catching on too. Even the saplings the nursery grows from the seeds of unsellable mangosteens are flying off the shelves.
This year, I have just one plant which gave me fruit for almost 10,000 rupees worth fruit. About 40 kilo I sold. So I thought, why not? I'm taking 120. I want to plant these saplings the best possible way, and I want to make it for a commercial purpose.
He won't be able to capitalise on mangosteens from those trees anytime soon. It takes up to 10 years for a mangosteen tree to bear fruit. They need a warm, tropical climate with high humidity and slightly acidic soil. That's why they're mainly produced in South and Southeast Asia. Once the fruit does grow, the farm tries to ensure pickers don't miss a single ripe mangosteen. Badhu has been picking mangosteens at the farm for 35 years. During the peak season of June and July, harvesters like Badhu climb 40-foot trees in hopes of finding the best mangosteens, considered first grade. First grade mangosteens are 4 to 8 centimeters in diameter, with a purple or nearly black outer shell and a bright white fleshy fruit underneath. It's a delicate dance as the climbers race against the clock to pick mangosteens before they overripen or fall, ensuring no fruit goes to waste. Pickers rotate through sections of the grove quickly to control the quality of their product and prevent mangosteens from falling in between harvests. And if one falls, it will quickly lose its sought-after sweet and tangy taste and become inedible.
This one is a fell down fruit. I think fell down before 2 or 3 days because it's already as a stone. We can't open it.
Even if a fruit on the ground isn't rock hard, they still won't sell it. Mangosteen can spoil within days of harvesting, so there's a chance it'll go bad before reaching the customer. But every mangosteen they do pick has a predetermined destination, according to Manu, whose father started the mangosteen farm. The destination guides harvesters in choosing which mangosteens to pick. Nearly a third of the harvest is reserved for direct customers who come to the farm to buy their mangosteen in smaller quantities. The darkest, ripest mangosteens are sold to them because they need to be eaten immediately. Another third is purchased wholesale by other retailers. They pay 350 rupees a kilogram, or around $4.17. These buyers seek less ripe, lighter purple mangosteens that can withstand transport times. The final third goes to middlemen, including exporters who sell to other countries. The further Manu has to send the mangosteens, the more expensive they get. Shipping the mangosteens by air is 5 times as expensive as ground transportation, which factors into the final price. While only certain climates are suitable for farming prolific mangosteen trees, farmers can't depend on high yields every year. If a tree produces lots of fruit one year, it will produce less the next, causing production to vary in cycles. Last year, Manu's family farm made 10 million rupees, or about $119,000 in revenue from its harvest. This year, Manu expects a third of that. He says, regardless of fluctuating profits, his family continues to benefit from mangosteen's surprising success. While Merlin Muthadan Nursery doesn't have an export license yet, other farmers in Asia who do have to irradiate their mangosteens before they reach the US market. Irradiation is when the fruit is exposed to ionizing radiation to eliminate harmful bacteria or microorganisms. But irradiation doesn't come cheap. The fruit must be shipped to either a local irradiation agency or one in the United States, adding to transportation costs. From farm to table, the expenses stack up. Mangosteen aficionados like Stefan Lin bear the brunt of that cost.
I'd say it's more of like a treat. It would be more like a once in a while thing, maybe like once a month or whatnot. If it was cheaper, I'll probably go out of my way more to get it. But I do wish it was like $1 or so per fruit.
People are willing to shell out for treats like mangosteen, especially in the United States, where 57% of fruit consumers are interested in trying exotic fruits. Mangosteens are known as the queen of fruit after a rumour that Queen Victoria loved them so much she offered a knighthood to anyone who would bring some to her. Today's consumers agree. The global market for mangosteen is growing at an annual rate of 3.6% and is projected to reach up to $658 million by 2030. But this growth is relatively new. When Manu's father Merlin Muthadan grew up eating mangosteens from a tree his grandfather planted over 100 years ago, it wasn't a viable business.
നമ്മളിവിടെ ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ഇത് ഞാൻ സ്കൂളിൽ പഠിക്കുന്ന കാലഘട്ടത്തിൽ അവിടെയൊക്കെ പോയി പറക്കി ഇങ്ങനെ നമ്മൾ കഴിച്ചിരുന്നു. കാരണം ആരും അങ്ങനെ ഒരു ബിസിനസ് രീതിയിൽ അന്നൊന്നും ആയിട്ടില്ല. ഒക്കെ കഴിച്ച് അങ്ങനെ കണ്ടു കഴിഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ ഒരു ഫ്രൂട്ട്സ് ആണല്ലേ എന്ന് വിചാരിച്ചിട്ടാണ് കുറച്ച് കൂടുതൽ കൃഷി ചെയ്തത്. അന്നൊക്കെ ഇത് ചെയ്യുന്നതിന് മൊത്തം ജനങ്ങൾ നമ്മളെ കളിയാക്കിയിരുന്നു. കാരണം ഇതങ്ങനെ ഇത്രയും കൂടുതൽ പ്ലാൻ ചെയ്തിട്ട് അതൊരു ബിസിനസ് അടിസ്ഥാനത്തിൽ പോകുന്ന ആർക്കും പ്രതീക്ഷയുണ്ടായില്ല.
He didn't make much money from it initially.
തുടക്കം നമുക്ക് മാർക്കറ്റ് ചെയ്യാനൊക്കെ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടായിരുന്നു. സ്റ്റാർട്ടിങ് റേറ്റ് 20 രൂപയ്ക്കാണ് ഒരു കെ.ജി. 1 kg മാംഗോസ് നമ്മൾ വിറ്റിരുന്നത്. അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയുള്ള ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുകൾ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു.
But last year, his mangosteens sold for almost 18 times that amount. Merlin started off with 80 mangosteen trees, and now he and his sons look after 1,000 and counting.
All the new generation peoples are not into farming. I have a message like you all go for this kind of farming, and if you have a good marketing skill also, you can get a huge success from this.
Mangosteen isn't the only fruit in high demand. In the US, Yuzu is more popular than ever. But the large supply of fresh Yuzu in Japan can't meet the surge in demand.
I have been going to Japan a long time, so I love, the citrus.
Robbie Cook is the executive chef of Coral Omakase in New York City.
I do a smoked salt with the yuzu juice on that. Right now, winter time goes very well with a wild yellowtail, so with cooking it in a broth into the ponzu.
Throughout his career, he's been able to compare Japanese and domestic yuzu.
The ones from Japan have a little more sweetness and that orangey flavor compared to like lemony flavor. The thing that's nice about what getting from Japan is they're like really massive. So you get much more surface area. You can peel your own skins, freeze them, and save for a later date.
Right now, the only legal way to experience fresh Japanese yuzu is by leaving the US. Here in Japan, it's everywhere.
柚子を一言で表すと、日本の代表的な香りの一つだと思います。
Senkoji Farms in Kochi Prefecture sells its fresh fruit for as little as 10 cents a pop. In the past, its yuzu has gone for over $3.
柚子は以前はすごく値段がしたこともありました。現在は柚子の栽培面積の増加とともにある程度一定の価格で収まっていると思います。
52% of yuzu grown in Japan comes from the Kochi Prefecture. Hisashi Senkoji took over his family's 10-acre citrus farm when he was 31. Some of the yuzu trees here are more than 100 years old.
家族の歴史って柑橘のこの柚子の古い木の歴史だったり、
Only a few fruits will be high enough quality to sell whole, the most expensive form.
外観が大きさ、形、綺麗さ、それで最高の柚子っていうのは作られていきます。現在の規格では完璧な柚子は綺麗な傷は全くない柚子です。
The rest will be juiced and the peels used for essential oils. Senkoji Farms separates the yuzu intended for sale from the yuzu intended for juicing and sorts it by size and quality.
で、農家ごとにそれぞれ分けてこのまんま流れていって、まずあそこの3人おりますけど、そこで手で選別して汚いもの、傷がついているもの、傷みやすいもの、そういうものをまずのけます。それから選果機のカメラを通して大きさ、外観で選別されます。
One blemish too many can disqualify a fruit from being sold whole.
柚子は柚子のこの成果、玉で販売するやつは表傷5まで、裏6までなので12345678910なので、これはすごく綺麗だけどこっち残念、もったいないより良い柚子っていうのはやっぱり僕たちは綺麗な柚子って思ってますので、綺麗で見た目が綺麗な柚子。
Japan is known for its luxury fruit, which prioritizes a perfect aesthetic above all else. These premium pieces can be sold at a much higher price than the average offering. To keep every fruit as pretty as possible, Hisashi and his team of 4 harvest by hand.
収穫では柚子トゲが多いですので、革の手袋を使います。革の手袋で収穫して、まず手を守るように。手を守るにはどうして手を守るかって言ったら、革の手袋で、それで柚子を収穫の時に守るためです。
Hisashi says current technology doesn't take the yuzu tree's huge thorns into account, which can damage the fruit, but he has hopes for a more automated future.
ゆくゆくはこの柑橘の収穫っていうのもいずれ先進的なロボットがしてくれるとは思ってます。
About 4 out of Senkoji Farm's 10 acres are dedicated to yuzu. The fruit accounts for 40% of sales, so it's important to keep it as healthy as possible. But the question of why all this yuzu from Japan won't legally make it to the US can be answered in part by this imperfect green piece of fruit.
実際こんな実ばっかりの木がある。これ柑橘トリステザウイルスが入ってる。全然違う。こんなになったらこういう柚子ばっかりできだしたら木を植え替えて他の木にこれが移らないようにしたりします。
But citrus tristeza virus isn't the only threat to America's $3 billion citrus industry. Another infection, citrus greening disease, was first detected in 2005. Since then, citrus production in Florida has plummeted 75%. The The disease is incurable. Once a tree is infected, the only way to deal with it is to destroy it. Some markets, like the European Union, do allow yuzu imports from Japan under strict conditions that keep prices sky high. One German sushi restaurant told Business Insider it purchased a case of 12 Japanese yuzu for €7 a piece. The United States, on the other hand, does not allow any imports of fresh yuzu from Japan.
It might be touchy, but I do believe some chefs are getting from Japan.
Records from the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service show only rare instances of smuggled yuzu, the most recent being in 2016. But these records only tell us when smuggled yuzu was found. To start the process of lifting the ban, a trading partner would first have to request market access, something the USDA told BI hasn't happened yet. Fresh yuzu seekers in the States must buy their fruit from one of the few US producers, like the family-run orchard Flavors by Boomi. But local grown supply is limited, making it expensive. Flavors by Boomi sells its yuzu for about $20 a pound, compared to Sengoji Farm's $2.60.
To the best of our knowledge, we are the only growers of the yuzu or yuzu in general in the Northeast. Nobody else does it.
It wasn't a choice to grow it in New Jersey. We live here, so there wasn't anywhere else to grow it.
Since filming with BI, Flavors by Boomi has moved its East Coast production to Pennsylvania. Seema, Vivek, and their daughter Simran are the family behind the business.
I'm 16 years old, and sometimes one of them says, oh, the yuzu are like our firstborns because they were around before I was. So yes, I have been surrounded by citrus pretty much my whole life.
The Maliks started growing yuzu 20 years ago, but they had to work out some kinks before starting their business in 2017.
We did put a couple of trees in the ground outside. They promptly died.
There was no information available 20 years ago when we first started working with the yuzu. After tinkering around for a good decade, we decided to go commercial and started working with Michelin star restaurants, and have been doing so for the last 7 years now.
Because the East Coast climate isn't ideal for growing yuzu, a greenhouse was pivotal to the company's success.
We can control the climate, the feeding, the beneficial insects, the nutrition, everything is controlled.
The greenhouse also adds a layer of protection from diseases and pests. At the same time, greenhouse space is Flavors by Boomi's biggest roadblock to increasing supply.
The access to good greenhouse space is always a challenge, because we can't expand without building greenhouses. There's always this challenge to find the right land, the right space to do all this.
Scaling requires more labor from Simran, the farm's resident grafting expert.
We have close to about, I would say, 3,000 to 4,000 trees.
Since yuzu trees grown from seed take about 18 years to start producing fruit, most new yuzu trees, even in Japan, are created through grafting. The process involves attaching a budding yuzu stem to the root system of a different, easier-to-grow citrus tree.
Essentially, the way a successful graft works is you want the original tree to kind of absorb the graft and then be able to grow that tree going further. You don't want it to continue growing its own self, per se. This is a grafted yuzu tree. This part right here is the original plant, and this is where the graft was done, right here.
This graft was done about 2 years ago, and the tree is already producing fruit. But it will still be a few years before it's fully grown.
These are definitely going to take a bunch of time, somewhere between another 7 to 8 years to get somewhere along that size, or maybe even along this size.
Growing enough fruit is one thing, but providing quality fruit is another. Fresh yuzu does not have a very long shelf life.
A couple of weeks at best when it's fully ripe, because it tends to lose its juice content and tends to start becoming drier in nature.
So even if they could import it, many chefs would still pay a premium for domestic yuzu, especially when it's grown right next door.
I source locally, like they tend to be much fresher here, from travel time. You know, Vivek's just such a great guy. Like, I would rather support him and then always use his citrus, which is great.
Chef Robbie was one of the Marlick's very first customers, even before they established their business.
I think Vivek's is more comparable to Japan, especially later in the season when they do get bigger and the more orange comes out to it.
Robbie says frozen yuzu can't compare with the flavor of the fresh fruit.
This we can buy all year round, stays frozen. Similar flavor profile, but I'd say less floral notes, less freshness. And like I said, the juice tends to be like really punchy.
But for Japan's yuzu farmers, juicing is one of the only ways to access the US market. Yuzu juice can be imported from Japan because processing removes the pathogens, diseases, and pests that whole fruits carry. At the Japan Agricultural Cooperatives Processing Center, where Senkoji farms and other producers juice their yuzu, 10 squeezing machines are kept behind glass.
皮として販売されます。きれいな皮はそのまま皮として活用されるために。
The skins are processed with a slicer.
この外の皮の部分は柚子の精油エッセンシャルオイルを取るための会社に販売されます。
Yuzu cocktails, sauces, and seasonings might feel trendy in the US, but the citrus goes back hundreds of years in Japan.
昔から私ども柚子の文化とともに育っているので、この柚子の文化を絶やさないように。
My favorite thing is the yuzu bath that in Japan you can take on winter solstice.
The cultural significance that exists in Japan doesn't exist over here.
According to Data Central's menu adoption cycle, yuzu is in the adoption stage, which is all about growing an ingredients fan base. And the world's zest for yuzu seems to be increasing. Monin, a French flavor company, has named yuzu the 2025 flavor of the year. Monin has a history of predicting trends and influencing menus around the world, and market segments like the yuzu-based sauce ponzu and yuzu essential oil are expected to grow. While it's safe to say it's a trend in the US, Flavors by Boomi seems to be making a bet that yuzu is here to stay. The Marlicks are currently expanding their business to California.
We have close to about, I would say, another 10,000 trees in California of different varieties.
This way, the company can shorten the travel time and provide even fresher fruit to chefs on the West Coast.
We would love to process at some point in the future. Right now, we are just producing fresh fruit and supplying directly to our clients, and that's it.
The citrus has a way to go before ubiquity outside of Japan, but it seems to be a matter of time.
The price of eggs reached its highest peak ever in 2025. And though bird flu outbreaks have led to price spikes before, scientists say this outbreak was different.
The H5N1 avian flu usually starts in wild migratory birds. If other birds come into contact with infected birds or contaminated surfaces, they catch it too. The virus then copies itself rapidly, attacking multiple organs. And at large poultry farms, chickens are kept in such close proximity that the virus can spread quickly between them. The flu is so severe in chickens that entire flocks can die within 48 hours of infection. Federal policy requires all the birds in a flock be killed if just one tests positive for avian flu. So far, farmers have had to kill more than 170 million birds.
In 2015, that number was in the 50 million range.
Culling hens will raise egg and chicken prices in the short term, but it stops the flu in its tracks. Then farmers can rebuild their flocks and get egg production going again. During the outbreak 10 years ago, poultry producers did just that, and it worked. So why isn't it working now? Well, for the first time ever, the avian flu has been found in cows. Scientists believe infected cows can pass the virus to healthy poultry flocks. And the risk is higher when dairy farms and poultry farms are near each other, like they are here. That's made it a lot harder to contain the spread.
Because the more movement that you have of the virus and the more replication of the virus, the more chances the virus has to mutate and adapt to a new host.
A host like us. Because cows and humans have a few things in common.
They've had very high levels of virus, like in their udders. And what we know is that the types of receptors that they have in their udders are receptors that are found both in human eyes, human upper respiratory tract, and human lower respiratory tract. And depending on how it mutates, there's different concerns that come up both around how communicable it is between people, and then how deadly it is, how likely it could be to cause pneumonias and kill people.
Out of 70 human cases reported so far in the United States, there has been one death, a resident of Louisiana. Almost 60% of these cases came from exposure to cattle. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the current public health risk for humans is low. But Crystal Heath, a veterinarian, is skeptical of this messaging. We followed Crystal, who has been photographing dairy and poultry farms in California to document and expose the severity of the outbreak.
Today we're driving by some of the dairies and poultry facilities that I've been by before. Last time I was there, I filmed aborted fetuses on the ground, cows with a lot of nasal discharge, and cows breathing rapidly. I don't know for sure if they had avian influenza, but those are all signs of avian influenza. We can't see the implications of the outbreak in poultry flocks because they're hidden away. But with avian influenza in dairy cows, they're out in the open. It's easy to drive by any facility and see for yourself what's happening. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot of footage in the media showing sick cows.
In about 2.5 miles, take exit 85 toward Page Avenue.
So we're just gonna see. Sometimes I don't see any signs of illness until I actually photograph them. Oh, put your camera down. I'm gonna drive to the next area here. See how many birds there are. So you'll see the birds eating the feed, drinking out of the water troughs, and pooping in the water troughs, so they could potentially spread this disease to the cows. And you can hear all of the birds in the background, and also hear the cannon. That is a loud boom trying to deter the birds. The birds seem unimpressed by the cannon, but you could see how avian influenza could spread from the birds to dairies like this.
Business Insider cannot confirm that all of these dairy farms have had avian flu outbreaks. But as of April 2nd, 996 dairy herds in the U.S. had contracted bird flu. Over 75% of them were in California.
You have thousands of highly stressed animals housed in these facilities in close contact with human beings. This is the perfect environment for viruses to mutate and potentially jump to humans. It's hard, even under the best circumstances. A lot of these facilities are implementing all of the biosecurity protocols available to them, and they are still having outbreaks.
Experts say there's no reason as of yet to believe you can get bird flu from drinking pasteurized milk or eating beef.
We have just not seen anyone get sick by that route.
But egg prices are at record highs, cows are getting sick, and humans could be at risk. What can we do? There is one other option: vaccination. But producers are worried this would ruin their ability to trade internationally. Trade partners refuse to buy vaccinated poultry because, in theory, those birds might not exhibit symptoms but could still carry and spread the disease. The Congressional Chicken Caucus says that losing access to the export market could mean an annual economic loss of $10 billion or more. And yet, the avian flu has already spread to every continent but Australia.
I hope they realize that actually wild bird migration patterns, wild bird flocks, even without vaccination, the chance is still there that you're going to import or there will be spillover in some manner. If the detection is a problem, then you need to have better protocols in place for surveillance of imported poultry in general.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services for the Trump administration, who's known for stating misinformation about vaccines, claimed vaccination would turn those birds into mutant factories. He suggested letting the virus run its course without intervention.
You know what else causes mutant factories is unregulated spread, because you have ongoing mutations, you have ongoing spillovers. People have thought about this for vaccinating humans at times too, right? There is, of course, a risk because viruses will then continue to replicate, continue to mutate. But that has never been an argument to not vaccinate people or anybody. We still have a goal that is a reasonable goal, which is to reduce morbidity, reduce mortality.
RFK Jr.'s comments came as the USDA announced an additional investment of $1 billion to combat bird flu, with $100 million dedicated exclusively to vaccine research. The Biden administration spent just over $2 billion on managing the outbreak with limited success. But these billions aren't just about finding a solution.
These companies that do this and have to exterminate their birds due to avian influenza get millions of dollars in taxpayer-subsidized bailouts.
The recent USDA investment allocates 40% of the funds to compensate producers for their losses. Critics think this could disincentivize poultry producers from changing their farming practices.
It's important for people to remember that when you have a lot of money on the line, health often will be second until there's no choice, until a lot of people get very sick quickly and now you really have to do something about it.
Several poultry farmers declined to speak with Business Insider for this story, with many citing concerns of retaliation and losing contracts with clients. The Department of Justice recently launched an investigation into price gouging by large egg producers, including withholding supply to keep prices high. All the while, restaurants and consumers are struggling to manage. Tribeca Park Cafe in New York City had to raise the price of the classic bacon, egg, and cheese by 75 cents. The owner even put up Business Insider articles about the rising price of eggs to try to explain this decision to customers. Still, it didn't go well.
We lost about close to half the trains.
Across the country, restaurants like Waffle House have done the same thing. Bakeries like Norma's Sweets in New Orleans are also feeling the heat.
Oh, it's hurting, man. Normally we get them for $35, $40 a case, and now we're paying like $118, $120. It's horrible, it's tough.
Americans are seeking out deals on cheap eggs whenever they can.
Absolutely love Costco, so waiting in line is no problem. And we got here at 9 a.m. right when they opened, and there was already a line like this.
In 2015, it took about 6 months for egg prices to return to pre-outbreak levels. We're in the third year of this recent outbreak in the US, and the only relief the egg market has seen is a drop in wholesale egg prices. But it's unclear if and when consumers will see lower prices at the grocery store. In fact, in March, the USDA predicted prices would rise 57.6% in 2025. And despite the extra government funding to combat bird flu, widespread layoffs of public health workers could make fighting the disease harder. Harry is more optimistic about egg prices.
Let me kind of go through a really brief little cycle with you. The bird flu causes this supply shock, which causes prices to double, then send market signals to existing egg producers to expand their production and to take advantage of the high price. In a funny way, the high prices that we observe right now may cause low prices eventually. Producers right now that have healthy hens, you can bet they're expanding their production.
Still, infectious disease experts warn that the mutation of the virus makes market recovery more complicated this time around. So is there any way to save money these days? Trader Joe's, Aldi, and Costco often have the best deals on eggs, but that doesn't help if you can't find any in stock. What you can find are substitutes, like bananas and flaxseed for baking, chickpea flour for an omelet, or good old-fashioned liquid egg substitute. And if you're worried about protein, consider other options, like beans, seeds, or nuts. Even if you aren't quite ready to make the change, rewriting your favorite recipes to be egg-free might come in handy the next time egg prices spike.
Soaring egg prices have hit diners like Summit in New Jersey especially hard.
Eggs you heard about. Before COVID, we were paying $1.20 a dozen. It shot up to $8.60, I think, the top. And now we're like $3.75.
Eggs are paired with Taylor ham in the diner's iconic breakfast sandwich. The meat was under $3 a pound before the pandemic.
Now we were paying $4.75.
Did you have to raise them at all?
I did. I had to do it after COVID because everything went up, but my prices are still not bad.
But it seems Summit Diner is not alone in this challenge.
In the last couple of years, there have been a couple of dozen diners that have closed and not reopened or torn down. Some diners are just sitting there waiting for a buyer.
Supply and demand issues are just part of why some foods are more expensive. Others are now considered culinary delicacies in restaurants worldwide. Caviar has long been considered a luxury, but in recent years, sturgeon eggs from Madagascar are making waves among Europe's Michelin-starred restaurants.
Traditional caviar can only come from sturgeon. They're native to the Northern Hemisphere. Many of the most popular species come from the Caspian Sea, where waters can be much colder than Madagascar's.
Dans les autres endroits de Madagascar, les côtes de Madagascar étaient tout à fait inadaptées à l'élevage d'esturgeons parce que les eaux auraient été bien trop chaudes.
That's why the founders raised their fish in Lake Montesua, about 1,400 meters above sea level. The team spent months crossing thousands of miles in search of temperate waters like this. The lake rarely tops 25 degrees Celsius, and it gave this farm an advantage. While sturgeon in the Caspian Sea might grow slower during cold winters and hot summers, the company says fish here mature year-round, thanks to these moderate temperatures.
À Madagascar, on peut dire qu'on a 3 ans d'avance sur les croissances, sur la performance, et 3 ans d'avance aussi sur le caviar.
The whole process starts in the hatchery, where they care for thousands of baby fish until they're mature enough for the lake. Sturgeon are notoriously tricky and expensive to raise. Compared to other farm fish, like salmon, sturgeon need a long time to grow. They can take a decade to mature, while a salmon only needs 3 years. So operating a sturgeon farm could cost 5 times more than a salmon one. But the team's first hurdle was keeping the fertilized sturgeon eggs alive along thousands of miles to Madagascar. They failed 4 times, trying to import them from France and Russia. But the 5th time was the charm. The company imported 35,000 healthy sturgeon eggs back in 2013.
Les gens se moquaient de nous, clairement.
That's Delphine Dabazi, one of Assapenser's founders.
Et même les plus grands experts nous ont tous déconseillé de nous lancer dans ce projet faux. C'est que le 26 juin 2017, le jour de la première production du premier poisson, que nous nous sommes dit qu'il y avait une chance que ça fonctionne.
Nearly a decade later, they've grown their fish population to over 60,000. And they raise 6 different species, one of which was thought to be extinct. Only female sturgeon produce caviar, so once they're big enough, the team separates them by sex.
Avec l'aspect extérieur du poisson, on ne peut pas déterminer le mâle de la femelle. Donc du coup, on est obligé d'utiliser un échographe.
The females head to the farm. With 16 hectares of pens, the fish have room to move.
Comme dans tout élevage surdensitaire est voué à l'apparition d'agents pathogènes. Donc au plus on réduit la densité et plus on limite ce risque.
That's Jérôme Bastide. He's the farm's breeding manager.
Donc au maximum, on ne va pas dépasser 25 km².
They use 3 nets to contain the fish in the pens. One where the fish live, an extra net in case they escape, and a net on top to hold back birds. 10 full-time weavers make and mend the nets on site. It takes 31 miles of rope and a month of weaving to make just one net. Assapencer has hired and trained 300 Malagasy workers. The company says it pays 3 times the minimum wage.
Ny antony nampatongalay hiditra tato amin'ny société ty tena hita nisy fivano ny tao saina tokantranoay mampivoatra ny fiainana ahafahana ivery da ny zanakay afaka miana.
A team heads out to feed the fish 5 days a week. First, crews test the water.
Ny antony anaovana ny prélèvement anaty cage mba ahafantarana oxygène.
When there's enough oxygen, they can start adding feed.
Alohany amy sakafo dia lemana ny sakafo mba tsy hitsingevana dia afangaro tsara. Dia aparitaka atao ampovoany tsara mba tivoaka ivelany. Dia hohanina ny vary. Hohanina ny paille. Dia ariana ato anaty kazy.
That's how the food will sink to the bottom, where the sturgeon eat. The company produces about 60 tons of feed a month, made from a base of fish meal and vegetable meal, like soybean or rice bran, yeast, and water. If the fish aren't fed the right thing, Jérôme says they could take twice as long to grow.
Donc d'où l'importance d'avoir un aliment sur mesure par rapport à son espèce.
Et je vais dire que ce qui coûte le plus cher dans l'exploitation, c'est la production de l'aliment du poisson.
The company spends over $130,000 a month on feed alone. Assapencer makes the food on site and sources about 80% of its ingredients from farms nearby.
Ça a développé toute une économie locale en fait. Il y a les paysans, il y a les épiceries.
Donc ça c'est le tuto de soja. Ça c'est local.
Arimonda manages the feed mill. His team grinds all the raw materials into powder. Machines then cook and shape the feed into granules. The recipe and size of the pellets change based on the age of the fish.
Plus le poisson est jeune, plus il a besoin d'énergie. Plus le poisson est jeune, plus il a besoin de protéines et de lipides.
Feed is such a big expense for Assapencer because the fish eat so much of it.
De 4. Donc ça veut dire que la femelle a besoin de 4 kg de granulés pour produire 1 kg de poisson.
Indro maraina de après-midi amuru.
While the sturgeon feed, there's always a diver watching below the surface to see how quickly the fish eat and how deep they go. Every few months, Jérome's team pulls fish out of the water. He checks for roe in the sturgeon using this ultrasound machine. These fish were born in 2017.
Et tous les points noirs et blancs, ce sont du caviar.
He measures the roe to help determine which fish need more time to develop their eggs. They isolate the fish that need a few more years to mature. These females are Persian sturgeon. They'll spend the last few weeks of their lives in cold pools.
Qui va permettre en fait d'arrêter le métabolisme de la femelle et d'avoir une très bonne qualité des œufs. Cette étape, elle est très importante parce que c'est l'étape qui va nous permettre d'enlever les mauvais goûts que le caviar peut avoir s'il y en a.
These species can be harvested young, at only 7 years old.
Une fois qu'on a abattu les femelles, on va faire la saignette et on va les rater jusqu'à ce qu'il n'y ait plus aucune goutte de sang qui sorte du poisson.
This sturgeon weighs 16 kilos, but they can go up to 20.
Just atus katan tanan naru. Dia tu anin faranya dua to kaikin babanya tum tanan naraya. Daya to faranya bat. Sumari sistema mafis pa. Sumar mafis tin. Ya dewa pita kata natan fi wala like KVP.
The valuable roe makes up about a fourth of its body weight. Mandim bin Salama worked as a cook before joining Assapencer. But the roe isn't finished caviar just yet. Workers run the eggs over a sieve to separate them from the fish's innards. Then they wash the eggs to remove any leftover bits. These workers spread the roe out so they can see any misshapen or discolored eggs that need to be removed. Now they race against the clock to salt the roe in a minute.
Pourquoi 60 secondes? Parce que si on le fait plus, ça risque de ramollir les œufs.
Any less time, and the eggs won't have a consistent salty taste. The salt, along with 4 months of aging in these fridges, helps develop the caviar's nutty flavor. A kilo of Rova caviar can go for over $5,000. The cost is on par with European brands. Assapencer exports 90% of its caviar to Europe, but it's up against stiff competition. China is Europe's biggest supplier. It raises sturgeon on massive farms like this one, 3,500 times larger than Assapencer's. Since 2014, China has been selling the most expensive caviar, the kind harvested from beluga sturgeons, seen here at a farm in Florida. But Assapencer is still years away from harvesting its first beluga roe, because it takes nearly double the amount of time to raise the high-priced fish compared to other sturgeon species.
On ne sait pas encore combien on va produire en vitesse de croisière. La vitesse de croisière, ce sera à partir de 2026, 2027 ou 2028, quand nos belugas commenceront à bien produire le caviar.
Until then, Assapencer is trying to sell the caviar types that are ready. The company has opened offices in Paris, Brussels, and New York City in hopes of hooking Western markets on African caviar. The team has already managed to convince chefs at some of Europe's top restaurants.
Faire découvrir des produits comme ça à nos clients, c'est splendide.
Boris Campagnella is the executive chef of Le Crine, a Michelin-starred restaurant. He was one of the first chefs in Paris to put Rova on the menu, back in 2019.
C'est-à-dire que j'ai pas entendu parler, elle est venue me voir un jour, je crois que c'était il y a 3-4 ans, elle est venue me voir dans la cuisine. Elle m'a présenté un caviar, déjà elle a ouvert la boîte. Je dis pas grand-chose, je goûte. Le produit incroyable, un goût, une teneur en bouche, la dureté des œufs, enfin la couleur, enfin tout. Je dis mais comment vous faites pour faire un truc pareil?
He's topped dishes of torch shrimp, lamb tartare, and ceviche with Rova caviar.
J'aime mettre un plat dans le menu avec du caviar.
Like this dish of abalone with brown butter.
Ça c'est de la groseille de mer. mais on l'annonce à chaque fois qu'on arrive à la table, on annonce caviar de Madagascar. Donc forcément, ça interpelle. Ah, qu'est-ce que vous avez dit, chef? Caviar d'où? Je connais pas, il faut du caviar Madagascar, mais incroyable.
And Boris isn't the only chef who's stocked these tins. About 15 restaurants across Europe now serve Rova. The company's success abroad has allowed it to invest back into Madagascar. Assepenser started by training locals, like Tafitasoa Ediarivoni
Dia narifan'ny orinasa nanao formation.
And Menchka.
Ny asa talohan'ny orinasa mbola tsy teto aloha dia betsaka ny ankizy teto Mantasoa mbola tsy anasa. Dia rehefa nisy le société mipetraka teto dia manodidina zato ny mpiasa avy ao Mantasoa lasa manana asa ato amin'ny Assepenser.
Au départ, on avait beaucoup d'expatriés du monde entier. Et à aujourd'hui, petit à petit, ce sont les Malgaches qui ont remplacé les expatriés.
Satria mponina avy ao Mantasoa izay tsy nahalininina momba ny esturgeon no niakatra lasa cadre dia tena faly be mihitsy.
The company provides rent-free housing for its workers. The housing site also has a grocery store, a mini theater, and a gym.
Nous, on prépare les repas du personnel, à peu près 300 personnes par jour.
That includes 3 meals a day. Most of the employees' food is grown on site.
L'idée est de tirer Madagascar vers le haut et de le sortir un petit peu de sa pauvreté. Et je trouve que plus on fera des produits de luxe à Madagascar, plus on aidera le pays à se développer.
Like caviar, Huitlacoche, or corn smut, was once considered a throwaway food. Today, it's experiencing a renaissance among fine dining restaurants in the US.
Creo que todos, la primera vez que probamos el Huitlacoche, nos quedamos sorprendidos porque no acabas de entender exactamente qué es. Si no está el hongo y no está el maíz. Entonces te estás comiendo las dos cosas.
These days, Huitlacoche is most commonly served in quesadillas.
Justamente en Oaxaca, muy niña, y fue de una forma muy tradicional con quesadillas y el famoso quesillo de Oaxaca. Y me sorprendió el color, sobre todo morder una quesadilla y que salga negro de esa quesadilla. Pero bueno, el sabor era sutil, era dulce, aromático.
Locals like Lorena have been eating for years what fine diners in the US are just now starting to enjoy. And this new audience has created a business opportunity for Mexican farmers like Emilio and his son Heriberto.
Pues descansamos solamente cuando se nos llega a tocar un mal imprevisto, que en partes nos cae una granizada, que se echa a perder el Huitlacoche, en partes también que nos falla el líquido. Pero de ahí normalmente son todos los días, porque el mercado y los clientes quieren todos los días.
Even though Huitlacoche is a disease and technically rotting the corn, it's still crucial to harvest it before it becomes too rotten.
Lo tenemos que estar cortando cuando el Huitlacoche esté intacto, pero cuando el Huitlacoche ya se nos está pasando, ya está generando más agua y ya es pérdida para nosotros. Ya lo vendemos a mitad de precio, incluso hasta más barato.
The best time to find this local favourite is during Mexico's rainy season, since the heavy wind and rain causes wounds in the corn the fungus can infect. Huitlacoche only affects unpollinated and damaged corn. When the fungus first forms out of the corn kernels, it starts out a yellowish-white colour before turning grey with a smooth texture. This is the ideal colour and texture for customers. As the Huitlacoche continues to swell and form into galls, it turns black and eventually bursts open to release a black powder. It takes 2 to 4 weeks for the infection to take hold and for the galls to form. This means farmers must carefully monitor crops to harvest Huitlacoche at the exact right time and maximize its brief shelf life.
Lo tenemos blanco todavía, que está como blanco. Lo tenemos de garantía 5 o 7 días de vida en aquel. Todavía normal, porque todavía está blanco el grano. La textura del huitlacoche está blandito, suavecito. Entonces lo que procuramos que no se nos maltrate y nos haga negro, es por eso que se nos manchan las manos, porque ya está un poquito negro y lo estamos maltratando, ya se nos está pasando. Estamos produciendo alrededor de 3 toneladas por semana.
While this demand once outpaced the supply, things have changed ever since farmers found a way to infect crops year-round. Partnering with scientists to isolate the fungus and inject it directly into the corn.
Decimos a los dueños, como vamos a hablar que ya vamos a inocular, que le decimos a los dueños, 15 días antes compramos la milpa y le decimos ya no metas nada de insecticidas, nada de todo, para que no vaya a fallar en la cuestión de que decir que cuando se inocula la cepa, que no se muera, porque si tiene tantito líquido, tantito residuos de veneno, se puede morir el inóculo.
Changes in temperature can also render the injection liquid useless, so workers must handle it with care.
El líquido nos debe de entregar el doctor, siempre nos lo entrega alrededor de las 5 o 6 de la mañana, para que a las 12 o 1 de la tarde le estemos parando todos los inyectadores por el calor. Nosotros acá con mi papá y mi hermano, mi cuñado que inyectamos, lo usamos con hieleras portátiles. ¿Para qué? Para que en el momento de que a las 11, 12 a más tardar que estamos inyectando, le metemos hielo para que el proceso que tiene de la hielera, que llevamos el galón a la jeringa que vamos inoculando o inyectando, se calienta tanto con el calor de la planta y el calor corporal. Entonces lo que hacemos es meterle hielo para que siempre esté frío y no se muera el micelio y no se muera todo el inóculo que vamos inyectando, porque lo que queremos es que el calor no nos coma. Si el calor nos llega a comer, el producto se empieza a descomponer tanto el líquido.
However, if the liquid gets too cold or freezes, that can also kill the fungi, so balance is key. Heriberto and his father also take measures to protect themselves before entering the cornfields. They wear long sleeves since the prickly hairs on the corn stalks can cause rashes.
Y proteger a la planta, sobre todo, como le expliqué, poner cubrebocas y que hasta el momento de que estemos limpiando todo nuestro instrumento de inyección, que esté limpio, que no tenga nada, y cambiar sobre todo las agujas. Cada que vamos a inyectar hay que cambiarlas, porque las agujas son desechables. Igual es como una persona, cuando la inyectan se desecha todo. Así también las agujas se desechan todo el tiempo. En ocasiones andamos trayendo un recipiente o una bolsita, las recolectamos y las tiramos.
The most mature plants are injected first, before they can pollinate each other. But injecting the corn is an art, and it doesn't always go perfectly.
Aunque sea un experto en inyectar, no se hace al 100% todo completamente. 70-80% de producción, porque no todas las mazorcas se hacen a un 100%. Aquí tenemos pérdida. El error fue un error humano, que el piquete estuvo un poco arriba y no se llegó a poner el piquete hasta adentro. Por eso es que está todo el huitlacoche está en las hojas, porque el líquido quedó de fuera. Y en sí sacamos a un 100% de calidad y todo. Y en no, es basura, solamente es para el ganadero.
Despite how delicate the injection method is, it still has a significantly higher success rate than waiting for Huitlacoche to form naturally. Without refrigeration, Huitlacoche only stays fresh for 1 or 2 days, and any changes in temperature or humidity can cause it to become increasingly dry. So sending a less mature white-grey Huitlacoche to the market is essential for Emilio and Heriberto if they want to make a profit. While some producers now process Huitlacoche to be canned, which extends its shelf life and, in some instances, lowers its price, fresh Huitlacoche is still the most popular choice since that's what customers prefer. Smaller producers also don't always have the resources to preserve their Huitlacoche via canning. Instead, they typically sell directly to vendors at wholesale markets. Here at the Santa Rita market in Cuautla, depending on the supply, Huitlacoche sells for 20 pesos to 50 pesos a kilo.
Que ya se nos está agarrando de 100 y tantos kilos diarios, es en la mañana.
Many of the buyers here are local vendors who cook and sell traditional dishes outside, but also high-end restaurants who serve Huitlacoche in a variety of ways.
Nosotros lo conseguimos. La idea es siempre tratar con productores locales. El 75% de la carta está basada en hongos. Es uno de nuestros platillos estrellas, la mazorca de Huitlacoche. También lo usamos en bebidas.
Although Huitlacoche has been a local favourite for centuries now, the international culinary world has only just begun to admire it. US farmers considered the fungus a major agricultural problem, with studies from as early as the late 1800s looking into how to eradicate the fungus. Now, Michelin-starred restaurants like Oxtail in San Francisco are starting to add the fungus to their $295 tasting menu. But for chefs outside of Mexico, getting fresh Huitlacoche is a big challenge and part of why the price jumps so much once it crosses the border.
De ese precio base que el productor vende al primer intermediario, estamos hablando que puede haber una diferencia de hasta el 60 o 70%.
In the US, Huitlacoche imported from Mexico has more than doubled in cost, going from $15 to $20 a pound in 2020 to around $40 a pound today. Despite the costs and limited shelf life, many people, particularly chefs, are eager to get their hands on the Mexican truffle. Most of this demand is supplied by the Huitlacoche that is manually infected by humans. Thanks to Martinez Carrera and other scientists, Mexico now produces 1,500 tons of Huitlacoche a year. Most of this supply comes from much bigger farms than Emilio's.
O sea que sembramos poquito, nosotros sembramos media hectárea a la semana y ellos siembran 2 hectáreas al día. Pues esos son los que llegan, tapizan el de Huitlacoche el mercado.
Meanwhile, naturally grown Huitlacoche is getting rarer and rarer. The rise of hybrid crops, as well as pesticides, has made it significantly harder for the fungus to take hold naturally.
Originalmente, el precio que tenía el Huitlacoche, digamos, el siglo pasado, en los años 50, era muy alto. ¿Por qué? Porque los campesinos lo que hacían era, buscaban en las plantaciones de maíz las plantas que naturalmente se infectaban de Huitlacoche, y la demanda era muy grande y los costos eran muy altos.
Today, the prices are actually going down. While injected crops have made it easier for large-scale producers to meet the international demand, they've also made the corn more accessible to locals and created a more competitive market.
Ya, bueno, llega hasta ya 12 pesos, 10 pesos pues en el mercado. Entonces no le vemos futuro, pero también no podemos hacer otra cosa por ahorita.
Next, we head to Italy, where one of the world's most expensive fish sauces is made drop by drop.
Local fishermen head out to sea between April and November.
Quindi usciamo giornalmente, usciamo la sera e rientriamo la mattina.
After attracting the anchovies with lights, Captain Gilles and his crew use purse seine nets to catch them. The tightly woven nets are designed to trap the anchovies without entangling them.
Usiamo diciamo, questi coppi grandi, un coppo grande per poter prendere il pescato, perché non lo puoi prendere ammassato perché si schiaccerebbe, si rovina la qualità del pescato, si rovina la carne, quindi ne prendiamo un po' alla volta dalla rete in mare e lo mettiamo in questi, diciamo, contenitori in plastica con acqua a 0 gradi e molto ghiaccio per fargli prendere il ghiaccio e fare un'ottima conservazione e catena del freddo.
Because of how large the nets are, fishermen need to be highly experienced to use them effectively. To maintain the anchovies' quality and price tag, it's crucial that they don't get crushed or damaged in any way.
Facciamo questo mestiere tramandato da generazione. Ogni famiglia a Cetara, perché ci sono più famiglie a Cetara che fanno questa tipologia di pesca, poi dopo ha i propri segreti che tramanda da padre in figlio.
The bigger the anchovy, the more oil it will release, which helps result in the most flavorful sauce. To catch the biggest fish possible, Captain Gilles combines what he's learned from his father with new technology. Echo sounders not only help locate anchovies, but confirm their exact size and weight.
È un pesce da 9 cm, 9 cm e mezzo, vedi? 8 e 3, quindi una taglia decente come pesca delle alici. Perché le alici più sono grandi e più hanno prezzo. Le alici più piccole hanno un prezzo che possono girare dai 10-15 euro intorno a una cassa.
Larger anchovies sell for between 25 and 30 euros per crate at Italian fish markets.
Con la colatura si arriva a 100 euro e grazie al sacrificio che facciamo dei ragazzi che stanno a bordo.
When it comes to making high quality Colatura di Alici, the Italian name for anchovy sauce, the freshness of the anchovy makes all the difference.
Tu senti il sapore del mare, il sapore del pesce, però non ce l'hai in bocca il pesce.
Giulio's family has been making Colatura di Alici since 1915. This is what most of his mornings look like during anchovy season. Giulio has just received this morning's catch.
Allora, vedete, prima cosa, il pesce di stamattina. Questa è la prima fase, cioè si chiama scapezzatura. Togliamo la testa e l'interiore in un solo colpo, guardate. Testa e interiora in un solo colpo. Da ragazzi noi facevamo la gara a chi faceva più veloce.
Once the anchovies have been cleaned, they're placed inside barrels full of salt.
Lo fa disidratare.
Giulio uses high quality Italian salt from Sicily.
Perché il nonno usava il sale di Trapani e quindi usiamo anche noi il sale di Trapani.
After 24 hours in the salt, the anchovies are ready to be preserved and pressed.
Questa è la fase più importante, la salatura. E bisogna, come diceva mio nonno, bisogna farli in silenzio. È così, ad uno, il pesce messo a pancia e schiena. Verrà messo così, pancia e schiena. Perché quando noi poi andremo a pressare, non c'è vuoto nel pesce.
The anchovies are placed inside terzini, small barrels made from chestnut wood.
Se uno lavora in altre cose, secondo me non esce la colatura. Esce un'altra cosa, esce un sapore particolare, diverso.
When the wood comes into contact with salt, it hardens, fully sealing the anchovies inside. Each barrel fits about 50 to 60 anchovies, depending on the size of the fish. The salt kickstarts the release of liquids inside the anchovies. It takes 3 years and about 50 to 60 pounds of fresh anchovies to produce just a litre of anchovy sauce. Making Colatura di Alici is a meticulous and time-consuming process, but one he thoroughly enjoys.
Diciamo che è quasi finito. Nonno diceva, perché non lo facciamo bello? Perché non lo facciamo diventare un principino? Ci facciamo una bella corona. e faceva questo. Adesso vi faccio vedere. Guarda, sale. E poi ci faceva la corona. Ecco qua, adesso è finito.
What really brings the salt, anchovies, and the barrel together is weighing everything down with a heavy stone.
Queste sono pietre che vedete un po' più lisce, prese a mare, che le prendeva mio nonno, mio padre, che usiamo ancora noi. Immaginate che questo liquido comincia a trapassare questi strati di alici mature, si insaporisce ancora di più e vedremo che a goccia cola.
To check if the sauce is ready, Giulio will drill directly into the barrels.
Ci vorrà un po' di tempo perché potete ben capire che il terzigno è 3 centimetri di spessore, quindi per entrare dentro questo affarino di 2 millimetri è un po' difficile.
The Colatura di Alici drips out of the barrel slowly. This is when Giulio can confirm the quality of the colour and aroma.
La colatura deve essere un ambrato scuro, molto scuro. Non senti il sapore, cioè l'odore del sale, ma senti il sapore dell'odore del pesce salato. Quella è la colatura.
There is no way Giulio can speed up the process if he doesn't want to ruin the sauce. It must come out at its own pace, drop by drop. This makes authentic Colatura di Alici a true investment, and the intensive labour involved in producing such small amounts every year has meant a higher price tag.
Mio padre e mio nonno vendevano a pochissimo. Quest'anno abbiamo venduto a 150 euro al litro.
The first batch of anchovies caught in early spring is transformed into Colatura di Alici by December, so the sauce has become a traditional part of celebrating winter holidays.
Per me colatura è sangue, è casa. Questo è il prodotto che si usava e si usa alla vigilia dell'Immacolato e in ogni casa c'era questa tradizione di fare lo spaghetto con la colatura. La colatura d'Alici al palato è flipper perché la colatura tradizionale parte dal dolce al salato, c'è l'amaro, è un sapore completo secondo me.
Preserving this culture is a responsibility Giulio cherishes.
È la cosa più bella del lavoro che faccio, cioè ricordare le cose che faceva mio nonno e mio padre.
Not all food is created equal. Around the world, you'll find premium versions of all kinds of foods. We visited a town in India that makes a hybrid version of nutmeg and mace that is significantly more expensive than the spices grown in the US.
It's early morning, and Kokila is getting ready to harvest the spices. It's monsoon season, and afternoons are usually pouring with rain. So, Kokila needs to harvest quickly. While nutmeg needs good rain to grow, dry mornings like today are perfect for picking. Kokila is one of 4 female pickers who live on the farm and will pick today. During peak season, there can be 10 pickers at one time, but today, it's nearing the end of the season, and the yield will be lower. They expect to pick 800 to 1,000 fruits. They use aluminium and bamboo poles to pick. Some trees grow up to 50 feet high, so those can only be reached with the taller bamboo poles. Using these heavy poles while constantly looking up can leave the pickers with neck and shoulder pain. The nutmeg and mace grow together inside a yellow fruit on the Myristica fragrance tree. Once it splits, it's ready to be harvested.
இது வந்து ஓப்பன் ஆனதுக்கு அப்புறம் இப்படி இருக்கு. இது வந்து இந்த ஃப்ரெஷ்ஷா இருக்கும்போது பறிச்சிரணும்னா
If they leave it for any longer, even one additional day, it will quickly gather mold and be considered second class and about half the price. So, during harvest season, pickers need to check the fruits on the trees every day, especially during the rainy season. Another stressor for Kokila and the other pickers are red ants, also known as fire ants, which nest in these trees.
சின்ன சின்ன எறும்புங்காட்டி அது 1000 2000 3000 இருக்கும் அது மேலே விழுகும் அதுதான் எங்களுக்கு கொஞ்சம் பயமா இருக்கு புடுங்கருக்கு.
In small trees, the nests can be easier to detect and manage. But when they're higher up, the entire nest can fall on them.
கஷ்டம் இது பொரிக்கிறது மேலேருந்து பொரிக்கும்போது மேலே தலை எல்லாம் விழுந்துரும். சம்டைம்ஸ் வந்து கண்ணிலேயே விழுக ஆரம்பிச்சிரும். எங்கள் அம்மாவுக்கு அந்த மாதிரி வந்து ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் பார்த்து இப்போ தான் க்யூர் ஆகிருக்குது. அப்புறம் வந்து இந்த காய் ஜாதிக்காய் பூவில் வந்து குட்டி குட்டி எறும்பு கருப்பு எறும்பு இருக்கும். அது அதிகமாக இருக்கனால எங்களுக்கு கொஞ்சம் நாங்கள் தொளிக்கிறப்பெல்லாம் கடிக்க ஆரம்பிக்கும். அதனால நாங்கள் என்ன பண்ணுவோம் தண்ணியில் வந்து நாங்கள் ஃபுல்லாக கழுவி வாஷ் பண்ணதுக்கப்புறம் நாங்கள் எடுப்போம்.
The purpose of washing is not solely for insects. It also helps to extract the mace from the fruit. The women first remove the outer yellow fruit shell. The fruit shells are cleaned and later sold. Fresh shells are edible and can be made into jams or jellies. Dried fruit can be blended with nutmeg powder to be sold as a cheaper alternative. They then separate the good from the rotten ones. The good fruits are placed in water, rinsed and soaked for at least 15 minutes. Once they have soaked long enough, the mace covering will noticeably shrink and become much looser. This is the most time-consuming and delicate stage, separating the mace from the nutmeg without damaging it. They put their fingers in carefully to grasp the nut, then twist slightly and gently, and it snaps out. They must do it slowly.
ஃபஸ்ட் டைம் வந்து அப்பா அம்மா தான் பொரிச்சிட்டு இருந்தாங்க. இப்போ தான் நான் 2 இயர்ஸாக தான் இதில் வந்து பொரிக்க ஆரம்பிச்சிருக்கேன். ஃபஸ்ட்டு எனக்கு அதை தொளிக்கிறப்பெல்லாம் வந்து கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டமாக இருக்கும். பூ வந்து உடச்சிருவேன் ஃபாஸ்ட்டாக. இது வந்து மெதுவாக தான் தொளிக்கணும். நான் வந்து ஸ்பீடாக தொளிக்க ஆரம்பிச்சேன்னா பூவெல்லாம் உடைய ஆரம்பிச்சிடும். ஒரு 2 மாதத்துக்கு அப்புறம் தான் வந்து எனக்கு அது கரெக்டாக பூ உடையாமல் நான் தொளிக்க ஆரம்பித்தேன். 2 மாதம் ட்ரைனிங் எடுத்ததுக்கப்புறம் தான் எனக்கு அது கரெக்டாக வந்துச்சு. நான் இந்த மாதிரி தாமரை மொட்டு மாதிரி நல்லா இப்படி அமர்த்தி பிடிச்சோம்னா இந்த மாதிரி மொக்கு மாதிரி ஆயிருங்கண்ணா. அது தனியாக இதுக்கப்புறம் நாங்கள் காய வச்சுருவோங்கண்ணா அதையே.
Today, it will take these women about 4 hours to finish plucking the mace and nutmeg, which is about 100 fruits per hour. The ones that have already fallen to the ground on their own do not need the same careful plucking. They're much looser and easier to separate because of the fungus they've developed. These will be half the price of the other fungus-free, fresher nutmegs. Kokila and the others have successfully cleaned all the flowers without breaking any of them. After the nutmeg and mace are separated, both spices need to be dried in the open sun. If the heat is too intense, the nut can crack, so after one day, farmers move it to the shade. Shade drying also preserves the aroma. Some farmers dry the nutmeg and mace in ovens, but Polachi farmers prefer to dry it in gentler conditions to preserve the structure. All the best mace and nutmeg without any fungi are then placed in separate drums, where they can remain in good condition for over a year. Not all nutmeg and mace are the same. The spices harvested in the West Indies, in places like Grenada, are lighter in colour and have a milder flavour. The more costly East Indian nutmeg and mace have a higher oil content, which gives the spices a stronger aroma and flavour. These spices from Polachi and its main competitor, the Kerala district, both fall under the East Indian category and can sell for double the price of other varieties.
Our mace is really thick. It is in the shape of a lotus bud. The shape itself is different. Since it is very thick, it doesn't break very quickly.
This is Ranjit. He's the owner of the nutmeg farm here in the Polachi district. Most of Ranjit's profit comes from the mace. It makes about 5 times as much as the nutmeg. Pollachi's yield is 40% less than the Kerala district, but it has an advantage. The rains are less intense and less continuous, and low risk of fruit spoiling.
So these are the first class ones. So if you cut open, it's free from molds and it has a good aroma and fragrance. The spoiled ones will have a very foul smell. These ones, right now, they are costing around 480 rupees per kilo. The Pollachi nuts and the nuts that are from Kerala, they are only costing around 320 rupees.
While Pollachi is already an ideal location to grow the spices, their high value is not fully the result of where they are grown, but rather how. Ranjit and other farmers have perfected the fruit to grow larger and thicker, more than double the size of another mace in India. It took Ranjit years to develop a hybrid variety that has given Pollachi its competitive advantage. He also has a nursery where they grow hybrid seedlings.
This has a good one, it succeeded. See? Oh, wait, what happened? Erum, come this way.
Ranjit also uses the farming technique of intercropping, which means two crops share the soil to improve water retention in both. The ideal intercrop for Ranjit's nutmeg trees are coconut plants because they also provide the right amount of shade. But this premium quality was not always recognised or consistent with each farmer in the region. Whenever it came time to sell, Ranjit and the other Pollachi farmers grew frustrated. They were dependent on the bigger cities' expertise and experience to help them sell their product. So, Ranjit and the other farmers came up with a plan. They would all follow similar techniques, separate the best quality, and set the price themselves. 2 years ago, they formed a cooperative and used similar growing methods. Collectively, they now grow about 500 acres of nutmeg and mace. In the global food industry, this is significant because local farmers who make some of the world's most expensive foods typically don't see the profits. Whether it's other harvesters here in India who scour ponds for foxnuts, only to make cents for every kilogram harvested, or small farmers harvesting green cardamom for hours by hand, only to use most of their profits to cover production costs, or workers in Bolivia fueling the global quinoa demand who can't afford to eat their own crop. The success of the Pollachi cooperative has directly affected the quality of life for farmers and workers here, like Kokila.
அங்கே விட இங்கே தான் பெட்டராக இருக்குது. நான் வந்து மில்லில் ஒர்க் பண்ணிகிட்டு இருந்தேன், ஆப்ரேட்டராக இருந்தேன். அங்கே வந்து எனக்கு மந்த்லி வந்து 10,000 தான் சேல்ரி. எனக்கு அது பத்தலை. அது நாளைக்கு வந்து 250 ரூபா கிடைக்குது. அது கம்பேர் பண்ணும்போது எனக்கு இது கொஞ்சம் பெனிஃபிட்டாக இருக்குது. 10,000லாம் ஃபுட்டுக்கு எல்லாத்துக்கும் போக கம்மியாக தான் இருக்குது. அதனால் எனக்கு இது கொஞ்சம் பரவாயில்ல. இங்கேயே ஃபுட்டு நல்ல ஃபுட்டாக இருக்குது. அதனால் நான் இங்கேயே வந்துட்டேன்.
Recently, they achieved their highest rate for mace, selling to an Australian buyer for 3,200 rupees per kilo, 14% more than the aggregator rate. For the Pollachi farmers, the cooperative made a big difference. They sell to buyers across the globe and recently sold 12 tons of nutmeg and mace to a Dutch company.
Among ourselves, as a community, we had multiplied the best planting material, and now it is literally called the Pollachi variety. But the local traders from Kerala come, they ask for Pollachi maize. So it is doing very well for us.
When Wagyu beef is on the menu, you expect to pay a lot. But the priciest of all is a variety called Matsusaka, made from cows raised under strict requirements.
これが伊藤牧場の、サーロインです。月齢は、40ヶ月のサーロインですので。
Hiroki Ito is a third-generation Matsusaka Wagyu farmer. On his farm in Tsu, Mie Prefecture, you will find only virgin female cows. It's the primary requirement for any of the 80 Matsusaka Wagyu farms here in the Mie Prefecture.
オスよりもメスの方が、味も 美味しいですし、柔らかさもメスの方が柔らかいです。匂いでいうと香りがいいですし、味でいうと甘い味ですし、柔らかさでいうと口の中に入れたらとろけると。
Matsusaka beef has long been praised for its extremely low melting point, which is half that of other types of Wagyu. This means that when cooking, the fat melts in a shorter time.
融点が低いのでちょっと溶けてきていますけど、この融点もこの指で触ると分かるようにこうスッとへっこんでいきますね。融点が低いと滑るんですよ。この光っとるように手もね滑ります。
To reach this intense marbling, old generations of farmers like Hideo, Hiroki's dad, used to feed cows with beer.
昔は食体を起こした牛、食が落ちてきた牛に1代目の正和が与えてまして、でそれを僕は若い折に一緒に手伝って当時関わって飲ましたことはあります。普通の一般の元は昔はキリンビールとかそういうので普通一般的な銘柄はありません。僕が宿農しましたのが25歳の時でございますから、今73歳でございます。誰がビールを飲ましとるっていうのは、まず私は今はもうなくなったと思ってるんですけど。
Although there's no evidence that this practice increases a cow's appetite, many associate Matsusaka Wagyu with it. The fact that Matsusaka has kept a relatively low profile internationally has almost transformed this practice into a legend.
やっぱりそんなに好きじゃなさそうだったんですけど、どうなんですか？口から飲むっていうのを強制的にやっとるもんで、多分飲んでからあとはほろほろ酔いながら食欲増してると思います。
Hiroki doesn't practice this anymore. Instead, he has perfected the feed and is practicing circular agriculture.
そしてそこから取れたお米から取れる稲わらです。胃の中を整える役割で最初にこのわらは食べさせます。この後、濃厚飼料を与えます。ふすま麦、大豆かす、トウモロコシと配合されていまして、そして濃厚飼料は肉をつけるためですね。牛を大きくするのに与えるのが濃厚飼料です。
The cost of feed is an important factor that drives the prices up. To reach that soft marbling, Matsusaka cows need to eat a lot. They also need to eat for a much longer time than other cows.
1.5 倍ぐらいはかかっています。
Matsusaka cows are raised for 30 to 32 months, 6 months longer than other Japanese black cattle. Everything adds up over time for Hiroki. The costs of feeding, temperature control, air circulation, and cleaning the enclosures regularly to avoid flies.
100万で子牛を仕入れたら、そこから肥育で100万円経費がかかりますので、200万円かかっているということになります。
Farmers here call this raising period fattening. For the first 3 to 4 months, cattle eat grass to develop a strong digestive system. This is called the belly creation period. Then comes the finishing period, where cattle gradually switch to concentrated feed and rice straw to fatten up. Hiroki is now experimenting with even longer periods of fattening, raising his cattle from 35 up to 40 months. But raising cows for such a long time can also be dangerous for Hiroki, as a cow could get sick and die.
その長期肥育をしている間に当然牛の寿命というのがありますから、肥育期間が長いと当然人間でも一緒ですが、病気になったり、食欲不振になったり、あと体感の温度が感じにくくなったりと。でやっぱり長期肥育というのはいろんな面で、体に負担がかかってしまいます。
A cow at the end of its fattening period is a true treasure. Every year, Matsusaka cows get auctioned off and one gets crowned Queen of Matsusaka. While the highest ever price for one of these cows was 50 million yen in 2002, this auction has never really seen a low price, averaging around 20 million yen. Events like the auction have also fostered another legend, that farmers in Matsusaka massage their cows with alcohol. This time, it is not to improve their appetite, but their appearance.
うちはその生体の予選会で通った牛だけやります。生体の外から見る優勝を競う牛については必ずそういう掃除をしてきれいに出さなあかんっていうことやもんで、けどもうちの牧場は清めとしてやる。はい、こうするとこういう形になってド派手に見せたいもの。ビールよかはやられてる方の方が多いと思います。
It's not just adult cows that cost a lot. Calves can be very expensive.
この子牛は約100万ぐらいです。
Hiroki doesn't raise his cattle from birth. At 10 months old, calves are also sold at auctions throughout Japan. Hiroki spends almost half of his time at work buying calves, and he's very demanding.
まずは、顔を見ます。そして額が広い眉間といいますかね、額が広い牛は口が大きいので餌も食い込みもいいということで、あと角も綺麗な角を整っとる牛をまず見まして、その次に後ろから、お尻の方を見て、尻尾の上がり下がりとか、体格とか、全体的にしっかりした肥育できる牛を選びます。もうこの子牛は抜群に最高級の BMS12 がもう私の中ではもう確定しています。
BMS12 is the highest marbling grade for Wagyu in Japan. The more intense the marbling, the higher the price. For customers in Tokyo, 100 grams of sirloin costs 10,000 yen. But that's still much less than what Parisians are paying at Mariakanea, where the same cut is sold at €360. The most premium cut, tenderloin, sells for €5,000 per kilogram.
Comme on a bien respecté la température, le melting point c'est très bon. Dès que j'ai mis dans ma bouche, ça fond directement. Donc comme on a la chaleur naturelle de la bouche, donc ça aide à atteindre la température qu'on a besoin. Donc ça prend secondes. C'est pas ma première fois de goûter ça, mais chaque fois que je goûte, j'ai rien à dire.
The Paris restaurant was the first to successfully export Matsusaka Wagyu out of Japan and include it on its menu. Its most expensive tasting menu costs €520. Matsusaka Wagyu is heavily regulated. To include Matsusaka beef on the menu, the restaurant had to follow strict rules. The Paris restaurant needed to apply for a license, which took a year to be accredited. To maintain it, the restaurant needs to have a high rating on Google. And there can't be another restaurant serving Matsusaka Wagyu within an 840-meter radius. As of 2023, Hiroki has shipped only 3 cows to Mariakanea. Due to this limited supply, the €520 menu with Ito Ranch's premium tenderloin is served to only 1 table per day. This exclusivity is set to get a little bit looser. In the last 10 years, Japan has been a major importer of US beef, importing an average of $1.83 billion a year. Meanwhile, millions worth of Wagyu made the opposite journey as it reached international fame. A decline in tourism after the COVID-19 outbreak and a change in consumer behaviour toward cheaper meats exacerbated this. And now, Japanese cattle farmers are looking outside the country's borders. The export quota for Matsusaka has jumped from 24 in 2022 to 700 in 2024. Of those, it's the most premium cuts that are exported, going to high-end restaurants like Mariakanea in Paris. This is pushing farmers who want to ship abroad to bet on those lucrative but dangerous long fattening periods.
45ヶ月と。私も初めに世界初この45ヶ月で出すっていうのは生まれた。
Sun Gold kiwis are more expensive than the classic green variety, and the golden fruit actually helped save New Zealand's entire kiwi industry.
Kiwi fruit originated in what is now China and came in a rainbow of colors. In 1904, a school principal brought some seeds back to New Zealand. The fruit were soon called Chinese gooseberries. As production took off, New Zealand producers rebranded the fruit after the country's national bird because of its similar fuzzy brown exterior. That's why here it's called kiwi fruit, because the bird and the people are also kiwis. The green variety of the fruit became the most recognizable abroad, but New Zealand ships out green, gold, and red varieties to customers around the globe. Around 80% of New Zealand's kiwi fruit comes from the Bay of Plenty. There are over 11,000 hectares of orchards in the area, and tens of thousands of people come to New Zealand on visas to work in the industry for half the year. They pick the fruit from March to June, when it's starting to ripen but still firm.
We have to come here to earn money to help our family back in Vanuatu.
Samuel Colleran and his pick team are from the Pacific island of Vanuatu. They're harvesting green kiwi fruit at this orchard in Sepoki.
We have a team of 18 pickers here, and they'll pick about 150 to 200 bins a day.
The team gets paid per crate and splits the earnings among themselves.
We have to pick fast to get more beans. That's where we get more money. I'm experiencing this. That's why I go fast.
Samuel says the best technique is to twist off the fruit, grabbing 2 or 3 at a time. His team clears a whole row, carefully plopping each fruit into a pouch, which can weigh up to 55 pounds.
We go back home in the afternoon, we feel pain everywhere.
When it's full, they dump it into an awaiting tractor bin.
But make sure there's no stalks, no leaves in the bin, other things like no scratch on the fruits.
This tractor drives the containers to the collection site outside the orchard. Next, trucks move them to packing facilities within a few hours to prevent the fruit from ripening.
At the moment, we have 3,000 bins on site.
Michelle Bennett runs this factory. It's owned by Sika, one of the largest kiwi fruit suppliers in the country.
It is my first year in the industry of operations manager, but I have come through the ranks for the last 12 years. I started at that trade prep level of putting the plastic inside a box. This facility alone is 600 people to be able to operate 24 hours a day.
Sika has 11 of these pack houses across the North Island, processing over a fifth of the country's crop. This hopper tips the bins onto the production line. Workers pull out any disfigured fruit, leaves, or sticks. Brushes along the line remove any dust from the orchard.
And it makes it nice and shiny on the other side so that the graders can see a lot more defects.
First, this camera takes 150 pictures of every single one as they pass.
So the orange and the green have identified a mark on the fruit. It will then be kicked off to one of our grading tables, and a human will look at the defect and make the judgment call.
Then the fruit goes through a series of sorters. The lines send the fruit to the reject bin if it has any blemishes like this. This happens when 2 kiwi fruit rub against each other in the orchard.
They don't look so nice, but there's nothing wrong with the inside of the fruit. So that can be then processed out into beauty products, into juices, into ice creams.
Sun Gold kiwi fruit bruise easily because of its thinner skin.
Pretty much a pillow princess. We designed the machine to make sure that there's no drop of any more than about 10 centimetres.
A piece of plastic or sheet or a brush buffers any fall. If the fruit has a tiny blemish or is slightly too big or too small, it'll be sold on the domestic market. International consumers get those perfect-looking ones. New Zealand produces over 650,000 tons of kiwi fruit a year, and over 90% of it is exported. Every pack house hoping to export outside New Zealand and Australia transfers the fruit to Zespri, the only company in New Zealand allowed to market and advertise kiwi fruit elsewhere. It's what's called a single desk marketer, and it was established in 1997 to standardize quality and negotiate prices on the global market. This machine carefully puts on a sticker with the Zespri logo. Then workers close up the boxes and stack them. This robot secures every stack with plastic ties.
We pre-cool the product for 12 hours to bring it from ambient temperature down to a cooler 5-8 degrees. The kiwi fruit does not like to be frozen.
Cooling slows maturation, so Sika can store the pallets before they're shipped. Sometimes the fruit sits here for up to 8 months. Zespri expects this to be a record year for exports.
It's a good season. We've packed double of what we normally pack by this time of year.
But having a good year has gotten harder. In 2010, a kiwi fruit killing disease called PSA was first detected in New Zealand. It's not toxic to humans, but it blocks the plant's vascular tissue as it spreads inside the vine. The leaves start getting spots, new shoots die off, and the vines develop cankers that seep red or white sap. The whole plant can die in about 6 weeks. And because all the orchards here are side by side, PSA spread rapidly, affecting both green and gold varieties.
It decimated the industry here in the Bay of Plenty.
PSA has cost the industry over $500 million in losses since 2010.
We had to pull the whole plant out and basically start from scratch again. So our production and volumes were down for probably about 3 to 4 years to recover.
At the time, a gold kiwi fruit called Hort 16A dominated the market.
16A was highly susceptible to it. It's a devastating effect.
And it probably would have meant the death of the industry had it not been for this guy, Russell Lowe. He already had hundreds of potential varieties in his breeding program at the Plant and Food Research Institute in Sepoki. And luckily, one of them showed resistance.
I made the crosses which led to our selection Gold 3, which is Sun Gold.
Not only could they withstand PSA, but Sun Golds were also sweeter, had thinner skins, and grew quicker.
And it's now a $1 billion industry for New Zealand, so that's not too bad.
Do you get a nice little cut of that?
No, just a plaque to put on the wall. Some people would say it was luck, but I think it underlies the necessity with breeding to keep breeding.
Today, scientists at the Kiwi Fruit Breeding Center are picking up where Russell left off when he retired, breeding thousands of new seedlings every year.
So we take a male and we take a female that may have attributes that we want. We cross them and try and find the children that have both of those attributes together.
They grow the babies in orchards like these. But even if the new varieties have the traits scientists hope for, they also have to produce fruit consumers will actually buy.
If the growers can't make money out of a kiwi fruit, then that's not going to work.
Sun Gold has been a massive commercial success. It's overtaking green as New Zealand's most popular variety. It now makes up more than half of the country's kiwi fruit exports.
We're predominantly gold now. Green is sort of heading into the sunset a little bit. It hasn't been very profitable.
Overseas, Zespri can sell them for a premium compared to greens. At this Florida Costco in July, golds were going for $3 more. And in 2023, New Zealand growers made 3 times more from Sun Golds on average. China is Zespri's biggest customer, followed by Japan, Spain, and Portugal. The US doesn't eat as much Sun Gold, so it's a growth market for Zespri. But growers can't easily get their hands on Sun Gold. Zespri owns the variety and auctions off a limited number of licenses a year. In 2023, it sold only 350 hectares worth. That's how it controls the supply of the fruit and keeps the price high in the global market.
The price of the licenses has got quite high.
Chris Jensen is a third-generation kiwi fruit farmer for Sika. Chris has 22 hectares of green, but he's only been able to purchase 2 hectares of Sun Gold, and he paid nearly $745,000 for it.
green growers probably haven't been making enough money over the last few years to actually fund buying gold licence.
That's because they've taken a number of hits. During the pandemic, the industry lost about half of its seasonal workforce to border closures, driving up labor costs. And then there are the increasingly extreme weather events. In 2023, Cyclone Gabrielle pummeled producers. The floodwaters caused vine damage.
We lost 100,000 trays, so financially it was quite a big blow.
That's about $400,000 in losses. Last year, Zespri sold 19 million fewer trays of kiwi fruit than the season before. Luckily, this year is looking better.
I think it's going to be an above average year.
But as the climate down under gets more volatile, how is the industry preparing for the future? Well, it starts with management at the grove. And because sun gold kiwi fruit has weak roots, it requires specific care.
If we were to plant gold straight into the ground, it wouldn't be so good because the root system for gold isn't very good.
Matt Stewart manages this orchard for Sika. Like all kiwi fruit growers, he uses a technique called grafting. He takes a strong rootstock from a green variety and tapes a sun gold vine on top. He just has to make sure to line up the tissue behind the bark that carries nutrients up and down the plant.
So if they interlock, it should sync up and heal.
He trains the baby branches to grow along these strings so they don't tangle on themselves. There's one male row for every row of female vines. That gives bees and other insects enough male flowers to pollinate the female ones, which develop fruit. Matt prunes the male branches to make sure they don't overtake the fruit-producing females. Another challenge is wind breaking off branches, opening a wound for PSA to seep in. So growers plant pines between orchards and place white tarps between rows to act as wind barriers. Pesticides and protective sprays also help.
This just gives us a fighting chance.
Once there's some fruit, growers send it to this lab for testing to make sure the crop is maturing.
So if the fruit are going too soft, it's showing that it's maturing too much.
This test makes sure it's developing color at the right time.
You want gold kiwi fruit to be gold.
This pressure machine tests for firmness. If a fruit is ripening too fast or it's too soft, it can cause issues trying to pick the fruit. They also take a sample of juice to test sugar content. And at this station, they're making sure the seeds turn from white to black, a sign they're ripening correctly.
The rest are either chocolate brown or black, so that's a pass. If you had 3 non-black, so white or light brown or a reddy colour, then it's a fail.
Finally, they run a dry matter test. They take a slice of kiwi, weigh it wet, and then dry it out for a day in this room before weighing it again. The difference in weight is the dry matter.
Correlates to taste. The higher the dry matter, the sweeter the fruit is.
And the more valuable it usually is. Growers use all this information to decide when to harvest their fruit. Good orchard care is essential, but it's not enough to eliminate the risk of disease. Growers also need crop variety. That's been proven with other fruits around the world. Our global banana industry is built on just one kind, called the Cavendish. People love it because it's yummy, it looks nice, and it ripens during travel. But the Cavendish doesn't have any seeds, so it can't naturally reproduce. Because each one is a genetic clone, Cavendish are really susceptible to disease.
The domino effect, if you have everything wrong with just one clone, one disease can kill everything, plant by plant.
Which is exactly what's happening. A fungus called Panama disease is ravaging crops, putting the world's most popular banana at risk of extinction. Here in Colombia, quarantine zones and biosecurity measures have contained the disease in some farms. But scientists are hustling to try and naturally breed a Cavendish variety that's resistant to Panama disease. And they hope global consumers will take a chance on the diverse range of bananas that already exists.
We have red bananas, pink bananas. Why not try to incorporate that into the market?
There are hundreds of different banana varieties around the world. A friend of mine collected one up in Papua New Guinea that he said, if you didn't know it, you think you're eating a strawberry.
Kiwi fruit aren't facing as dire challenges as bananas. But just like those other researchers, scientists at the Kiwi Fruit Breeding Center know that breeding can give them a fighting chance against the climate crisis. That's why it's so important that scientists like Russell have kept naturally breeding kiwi fruit even after creating the miracle sun gold.
Look at it as breeding as a continuous process. Don't think we've made it, we can stop now.
Since Sun Gold, Russell and his team have developed an even sweeter kiwi fruit called Ruby Red. It has PSA resistance, and it's seen strong demand abroad, with sales expected to hit 1 million trays this season.
The middle part has got a sort of a sweet berry taste.
As temperatures in this area could increase more than a whole degree Fahrenheit by 2050, they're choosing to make parents that can handle warmer winters and droughts.
We've got to breed the next generation of kiwi fruit that can survive in those sorts of temperatures, humidities, the different pests that then come with those different temperatures and humidities.
But naturally breeding is slow-moving work.
It takes about 20-25 years to go from having an idea of what we want in a kiwi fruit to actually producing that kiwi fruit. It's a very long time.
They're hoping new tech, like DNA testing, will speed up the breeding process.
We could find a gene marker that allows us to understand if at the seedling stage a plant will have the attribute that we want or not.
So hopefully when the next generation of diseases and storms does come, they'll have a strong enough kiwi fruit at the ready.
You have good years and bad years, and the horticultural or kiwi fruit industry is quite resilient. Growers know how to get through hard times and continue on.
Similar to kiwi, there's also a more expensive variety of cinnamon, but telling the two apart isn't easy with the naked eye. Suneth harvests cinnamon for Rathna, one of Sri Lanka's largest producers. He starts working in the fields before sunrise, so he can harvest the spice while there's moisture in the air. Ceylon comes from the inner bark of cinnamon tree branches. They have to be cut at an inward angle. If Suneth cuts carefully, he can harvest each tree for half a century. After about 4 hours of cutting, he hauls the last batch of branches back to the estate's main building. Each bundle of branches is soaked in a water tank for at least 15 minutes. This will make the bark easier to peel off. Suneth's work has just begun. Until at least 10 p.m., he works with a team of peelers like Saman to scrape each branch one by one. It exposes a softer inner bark. This is the actual cinnamon. Brass rods smooth the surface and loosen the cinnamon from the hard wood. Then, with surgical precision, they carve and slice the bark into thin strips known as quills. The quills are so thin that they immediately curl up as they dry. Small pieces of inner bark, called quillings, prevent rips. Saman gets paid by the weight. The quills typically need to dry for a week. Then, they're sent off to the factory to be processed. 15 minutes down the road, sorters determine the value of each quill. The thinner the quill, the more expensive it is. Just like meat, cinnamon gets a grade. Rafna uses 8 in total, all based on diameter. The highest quality, known as alba, is as thin as a pencil. It's twice as valuable as H2 FAQ, the lowest grade. Only 1 in about 25 quills gets the alba grade. Sorters like Violet grade thousands of quills a day, and she can grade each one in a few seconds. Once the quills are sorted, they cut them into different lengths and package them up for shipping. The long cuts are packaged in bulk to be sold wholesale. Shorter 3-inch sticks go to grocery stores. But for much of human history, a sack of this cinnamon would have been worth a fortune. The spice was traded across the ancient world since at least 2000 BC. Merchants peddled legends that the sweet-smelling bark came from the nest of a mythical bird. At one point, cinnamon was more valuable than gold. By the 13th century, Sri Lanka had begun exporting the spice directly to Egypt, and Arab traders brought it to medieval Europe. Ceylon cinnamon was so sought after, it became a status symbol for the rich. Soon, European countries wanted to profit off the trade themselves. For more than 300 years, the Portuguese, Dutch, and British fought over the island and control of its valuable exports. The country declared independence and regained control of its cinnamon lands in 1948. But by then, a cheaper alternative, cassia, had already begun to dominate the market. Cassia comes from a totally different tree, which grows taller and has thicker bark. Most of it is produced on farms in East or Southeast Asia, like this one in Indonesia. The country has roughly twice the amount of cinnamon plantations as Sri Lanka. Producers can harvest entire trees at one time. The process requires fewer workers and makes it easier to produce in bulk. Cassia farmers can harvest 10 times the amount of cinnamon per acre than Ceylon farmers. But cassia could pack hidden health risks. Ceylon cinnamon boosts the immune system, lowers blood pressure, and stabilizes blood sugar. Cassia has health benefits too, but it contains high levels of a compound called coumarin, which can cause liver damage if consumed in high doses. Cassia can have 250 times more of it than Ceylon, but you'd have to eat roughly a teaspoon of cassia a day for weeks to put yourself at risk. Countries like Germany have rules to limit coumarin in foods. The US doesn't regulate the amount of coumarin in cinnamon. So, how do you spot the difference in the spice aisle? It's easier when you're buying cinnamon sticks. Ceylon quills have more of a brown hue. If they look red, there's a good chance you're eating cassia. Cassia sticks are also thicker. They're usually half an inch and hard to break. Meanwhile, Ceylon can be as fragile as cigar paper. Taste can be another giveaway. Cassia usually has a strong and spicy flavor. Ceylon is sweeter and milder. But powdered cinnamon is harder to verify. Some fraudsters have been caught mixing powdered cassia with Ceylon, but marketing it as pure Ceylon. One study found that over half of the products in European and US grocery stores contained mixed cinnamon.
Once it mixed with Ceylon cinnamon and cassia, it's hard to detect what is there. Only the coumarin content helps the people to know this one, but the consumers, they are far away from that kind of test.
But she says no one in the US or the EU is stopping this. In the US, it's estimated that the FDA only physically inspects 1 to 2% of imported foods, like spices.
The regulatory authorities, they are kind of deep in a silence in this adulteration. Even their health consequences, they are not taking any action.
So how is Sri Lanka supposed to compete in an industry filled with fraud? In 2022, it scored a major win. The European Union granted a coveted geographical indication tag to Ceylon cinnamon. That means any spice bottle labeled Ceylon in the EU has to come from Sri Lanka. It's like how real champagne can only come from one region of France. The tag could reduce competition, increase Ceylon's value, and boost sales. But it only goes so far. In both the EU and US, brands don't have to add the tag or indicate what type of cinnamon they're selling. So, it's hard for customers to know what they're eating. De Silva says adding the botanical or species name of Ceylon on the ingredients list will help inform customers.
So the consumer knows that cinnamon comes from which area of the Sri Lanka even, and then who did the processing, which conditions they use.
She hopes this will help Sri Lanka's thousands of producers earn more for their Ceylon.
It's a culture. How many people depend on this industry?
In South Korea, there's a rare seaweed that can only be grown under specific conditions, and it's becoming a prized ingredient in Michelin-starred restaurants.
10년 전만 해도 감태하면 뭐야 도대체 사람들이 감퇴? 막 이렇게까지 심지어 얘기해가지고 제가 되게 좀 속상했었는데 이제는 이제 젊은 친구들도 감태하면은 아 뭔가 고급 레스토랑에서 쓰이는 좀 비싼 거 이런 인지가 생기고.
But before reaching restaurant kitchens, Kamte's journey starts on the freezing cold western shoreline of South Korea's Garorin Bay. Unlike other types of edible seaweed like nori that can be farmed, Kamte can only grow in the wild on mudflats, coastal wetlands that form when ocean tides wash in sediment and mud.
그러니까 감태 같은 경우는 해조류인데도 불구하고 다른 해조류들은 이제 바닷물에 둥둥 떠서 있는데 지금 보시면 감태는 여기 이렇게 뿌리를 내리고 있는 게 잘 보이거든요. 그러니까 사실 해조류임에도 뭐 야채와 채소 같은 성격을 가지고 있는 굉장히 좀 독특한 해조류라고 보시면 됩니다.
Because of this, Kamte can only be harvested by hand. Any other way could destroy the root of the plant, impacting the supply for next year.
채취를 할 때 뿌리는 내버려두고 중간에 끊어서 좀 채취를 해야 나중에 걔네들이 또 자라고 하는 과정들이 있거든요.
Since Kamte can go bad if exposed to high temperatures for too long, harvesting happens from December to March, when the sea is the coldest. For these 4 months, Chu Hyun and her team must collect as much Kamte as possible to meet demand from buyers for the rest of the year. They can spend 6 hours a day pulling Kamte from the mudflats.
그러니까 추운 거랑 물에 잘 빠지는 거, 그 다음에 이렇게 쭈그려 앉다 보니까 정말 늘 이렇게 허리가 되게 아프더라고요. 작업하다 보니까. 손만 시려운 게 아니라 발도 시렸고, 그리고 지금은 안 그런데 정말 갯벌에 칼바람이 장난 아니거든요.
The intense harvesting process is only the first difference between Kamte and more common nori seaweed. Compared to nori's dark green colour and slightly coarse feel, Kamte's bright green, fine strands have a more delicate texture. This laborious process is just one of the reasons Kamte costs so much more than other seaweeds, and relying on the rhythms of nature means supply can be unpredictable.
이게 자연산이다 보니까 이게 안 나도 제가 할 수 있는 일은 없고 사실은 그렇거든요.
Recently, warming sea temperatures have disrupted the growth.
올해 같은 경우가 굉장히 어려웠는데 지금 좀 등섬 감태가 있잖아요. 그래서 올해는 수확량이 예전에 거의 3분의 1밖에 안 되는 것 같아요.
To make up the difference, Chu Hyun buys kamte from local fishermen who collect it.
지금 저희가 뭐 감태 작업하시는 가구는 한 50가구 이상 같이 하고 있어요. 제가 나올 때 좀 매집을 많이 해두는 편입니다.
Kamte also has a richer, more pungent flavor than nori.
감태가 굉장히 매력적인 게 되게 달달하면서도 좀 쌉스름한 향이 있거든요. 그래서 달달하면서 좀 쌉스름한 게 다른 해조류랑은 되게 좀 다른 특성이 있는 것 같아요.
But that flavor comes with a price tag. An 8-sheet pack of kamte costs $16. 50 sheets of nori can be bought for the same price. But whether it's harvested by workers or locals, all the kamte has to be washed back at the factory. It's the most crucial part of processing because any mud, debris, or critters left on the seaweed could affect how it tastes in the end.
그리고 얘는 이제 각각류의 새끼 같은 거예요. 사실 이게 자연산이다 보니까 이런 것들이 조금씩 있을 수가 있는데 이제 특히나 저희가 공급하고 있는 데가 뭐 파인다이닝이나 뭐 호텔이나 뭐 이런 뭐 백화점이나 이런 쪽이 되게 많은데 컴플레인이 걸리면 절대 안 되거든요.
Years ago, workers would have done this completely by hand, but this washing machine can clean 100 kilograms in less than 10 minutes. It's just one of the changes Ju-hyun made to the kamte processing techniques she learned from her father.
그러니까 제가 이제 회사 생활을 접고 서산으로 내려와서 아버지한테 아빠 제가 감태를 만들어서 팔겠습니다라고 했을 때 아버지가 처음엔 코웃음 치셨거든요.
Like many locals, Ju-hyun's father, Chol Soo-song, grew up eating kamte. But one day, he was struck with a new idea for processing it.
내가 이제 구워서 먹어보고 떠서 이제 보고 하니까 그때도 부가스 있고 좋더라고. 그래서 그때부터 이제 감태를 시작을 한 거야. 이제 김같이 떠서.
Ju-hyun and her team of 15 still use his techniques to process kamte at Padasup.
그래서 아직도 저는 좀 어려워하고 지금도 아버지한테 틈틈이 배우고 있습니다.
Workers use a technique called harrowing to form the kamte into paper-thin sheets. They submerge a handful of the seaweed in fresh water and mold it on top of a bamboo mat. While it may look simple, this technique can take 3 years to master.
사실 저도 몇 번 연습을 했는데 잘 안 되긴 하더라고요. 쉽지 않습니다. 이 작업이. 또 너무 두껍거나 너무 얇지도 않게 적당한 양을 잘 피는 게 되게 어렵더라고요. 우선은 여기 이제 빈 공간이 없는 거가 되게 중요하고 또 너무 이렇게 뭉쳐있지 않는 게 되게 중요하거든요.
Ju-hyun uses this press to remove excess water from the kamte.
물이 좀 잘 빠져야 이제 건조가 좋아지니까 또 건조를 오래 하게 되면은 상품의 이제 색감이나 이렇게 질이 조금 떨어질 수 있어서.
The sheets dry the rest of the way in these dryers. Padasup sells kamte sheets either raw or roasted at 230 degrees Celsius for 10 seconds.
구운 감태 같은 경우는 저희가 함초, 자염이랑 참기름, 옥배유 요 3가지를 부어 같이 믹스해가지고 양념을 합니다.
Padasup produces 3,500 sheets of kamte in a single day and exports roughly 500,000 each year. But carving out a market for kamte outside of Seosan was anything but easy.
저는 저희가 공장을 만들고 감태를 맛있게 만들면 사람들이 알아서 찾아서 사줄 거라고 생각을 했거든요. 근데 제가 창업을 하고 2014년도에는 저희가 매출이 진짜 빵원이었어요.
Ju-hyun knew the only way to create a market for the seaweed was to teach people about it.
그래서 제가 그때부터 했던 게 감태가 뭔지 이걸 좀 알려야 되겠다라는 생각을 해서 감태가 무엇인가, 또 감태는 어떻게 먹으면 좋은가, 감태가 왜 귀한 음식인가, 좀 이런 것들을 알리는 데 많은 초점을 뒀습니다.
She focused on promoting it to the high-end market, sending samples of kamte to Michelin-starred chefs and writing articles describing its unique taste and texture. Eventually, her years of tireless promotion paid off. Ju-hyun says she began getting inquiries from chefs around the world.
그러다 보니까 한국에 대한 관심도 높아진 데다가 제가 만나본 셰프님들은 식재료에 대한 열망이 굉장히 크시더라고요. 특히나 처음 보는 식재료, 다른 사람들이 안 쓰는 식재료에 대한 열망이 굉장히 크셔가지고 감태를 소개해드렸을 때 셰프님들의 반응이 정말 눈이 반짝반짝 하시면서 이런 것도 있었냐라고 굉장히 좋아하시더라고요.
One of them is Chris Cipollone. He's the chef owner of the restaurant Francie in Brooklyn, New York. It's one of several Michelin-starred restaurants that sources kamte through Padasup.
It's got this robust aroma. It's like an oceanic white truffle, is what I always describe it to people.
Chris has been using kamte in his dishes for the last 10 years. It's a key ingredient in one of the restaurant's signature dishes, conchiglie.
Here we are in the kitchen. We're about to start making our actual pasta, the conchiglie itself. using the seaweed, and we have 4 simple ingredients. We have our semolina flour, we have the gamte itself, we have water, and we have salt. Very simple.
Chris mixes the seaweed into the pasta dough.
I felt like it seasoned the dough to a point where you actually tasted it through the pasta itself. It's got a lot of umami, a lot of pop.
The pasta is then cooked in a buttery wine sauce and topped with clams.
It's right on. Got tons of umami, bright, great mouthfeel, great texture.
While Chris could opt for cheaper types of seaweed, he says Kamte's one-of-a-kind flavour is worth the price tag.
Anything's worth it in the pursuit of deliciousness.
And Chris isn't the only one willing to pay. Bada Sup provides Kamte for high-end restaurants in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, as well as Belgium, France, and Germany. But this new demand has caused raw Kamte prices to rise. Chu Hyun says since 2020, more producers have popped up.
지금은 감태하시는 분들도 조금씩 늘어나고 또 옛날만큼 많이 나지도 않은 경우들이 있어서 원물가가 굉장히 왔다 갔다 하는데 이거는 아마 다른 해조류들도 마찬가지일 거예요. 그래서 제가 처음에 감태 시작했을 때는 뭐 감태가 예를 들어서 원물 자체가 1kg에 이건 예로 1kg에 10만 원이다. 즉 하면은 지금은 거의 1kg에 한 30만 원 정도 되거든요.
But there is a silver lining. Chu Hyun says this new market for kamte is helping local communities in Sosan.
감태가 이제 많은 분들이 찾아주시고 또 저희도 수매를 많이 해주심으로 인해서 그 어가에서 겨울에 소득을 올릴 수 있는 큰 소득원이 됐습니다. 그동안 10년 넘는 시간 그리고 아버지의 30, 40년 넘는 시간이 그냥 헛되게 보낸 게 아니다라는 생각이 들더라고요.
내가 못한 거 제가 이제 열심히 하고 잘하고 있으니까 좀 마음이 뿌듯해요. 바람에는 이제 우리 송 대표가 노력한 만큼 이제 국내도 그렇지만 이제 해외도 세계적으로 이제 뻗쳐서 이 브랜드를 제대로 만들어서 끌고 나갔으면 하는 것이 바람이고.
Now we travel east of South Korea to Japan, where rising temperatures are threatening a prized variety of chili paste.
唐辛子ペーストですとただ単純に辛みがカツンときたりだとか塩分がきたりとかっていうなんか単独の役割がこう口にこう広がったりとかするんですけどもそれでまあ広がり方もこうカツンとくる辛みとかではなく優しい感じでこう広がっていくのでこう食材と合わせやすいところが他の調味料とは違うところだと思います。
That taste is, in large part, thanks to snow bleaching, according to the producer. Atsushi buys Kanzuri made by the only company in the world that produces it, Kanzuri Company, in Myoko, in Japan's Niigata prefecture. That's where Kanzuri originated.
通常はですね、工場、会社の近くの土地で雪さらしを行うんですが、見ての通り雪が全くなくて、今日は雪さらしに行くんですけれども。
Snow bleaching is imperative to the final taste and quality, so Akihito is willing to go to great lengths to make it happen. Upon arriving at the ski resort, the team gets to work immediately. This is the nearest place Akihito could find that had at least 50 centimeters of accumulated snow. They first have to step on the snow to compact it, but it can't get thinner than 20 centimeters. This thick snow is essential. If the weather gets warmer before the chili peppers are ready, the compacted snow will ensure the peppers don't get mixed in with the soil below. Otherwise, they will be contaminated and unusable.
雪さらしっていう工程はもうどこの食品会社もやっていないそういった工程の一つでもありますのでこれはカンズリを作る上ではなくてはならない工程の一つになっています。
This net both reinforces the separation and guarantees no pepper is left behind when they're collected 3 or 4 days later. Today, the team is bleaching about 300 kilograms of chili peppers. They were pickled in salt from summer until the winter months.
唐辛子を一度塩漬けしたその塩抜きっていう効果もありますし、塩漬けしていた段階でまずアクはだいぶ抜けるんですけれども、中まで浸透していたアクを雪がスポンジの役目をして、中のそういったアク雑味も全部吸い取ってくれるっていうことで。
Workers snow bleach the peppers about 10 times a year and only in the winter months. This restricts production further and makes the final bottle of Kanzuri more expensive than mass-produced chili pastes. And producing the actual paste takes years. At Kanzuri's factory, Sato Kazushige is making a new batch from today's harvest. Kanzuri paste is made with 4 simple ingredients: snow-bleached chili peppers, yuzu, salt, and rice goji. To start, the bleached peppers are mixed with rice goji, rice inoculated with fungus that is usually fermented for about 2 days.
かんずりに麹を入れることによって、発酵を促して、角の取れた、深みのあるうまさの、味に変化します。
The other important ingredient is freshly made yuzu paste. When all the ingredients are mixed in, Kazushige stores this fresh kanzuri in the warehouse. There, 600 tubs, each filled with 350 kilograms of paste, are aging. It must be aged for at least 3 years, and the most expensive kanzuri for 6. Many simpler chili pastes, on the other hand, are fermented for just 1 to 2 weeks. Locally, a small bottle of kanzuri paste aged for 3 years costs $6. 6-year aged paste costs $9. And exported, it's more than double the price. The aging process has a dramatic impact on the appearance and flavor.
かんずりでこちらが1年発酵させたものになります。こちらが3年、こちらが6年発酵させたかんずりになります。やっぱり1年目のものは、塩が立つっていうんですか、まだかんずりに馴染んでなくて、かんずりと塩とはそれぞれが際立つ、味になりますし、だんだん重ねていくとその塩味の角が取れて、芳醇なまろやかな辛さになって、発酵することによって、うまみも増してきますので、やっぱりこちらへ熟成を重ねた方が、塩もまろやかになり、味もコクのある辛さになってきます。
Kazushige has to check each container of kanzuri at specific times. Exactly 1 year after the kanzuri is made, it must be stirred to encourage the fermentation and to ensure it hasn't gone rancid. Otherwise, Kazushige has to discard the entire tub. Even the exact location where the kanzuri is stored can impact the success of the fermentation.
すべて同じようには、混合するときには、してるんですけども、色味だったり、粘度でしたり、そういったものは微妙にやっぱり変わってきますね。
To balance all these variables and guarantee the quality of the final bottle, Kazushige checks the color against this chart. If the kanzuri is within range of these 6 shades, it's ready to sell. Apart from some mechanization, this process is true to the original kanzuri making method. Before Akihito's grandfather, Dojo Kuniji, started Kanzuri Company, each household made kanzuri its own way.
近所の方からいろいろ集まっていただいてですね、味を決めたんですね。その味を決める決め手となったのが、要はいろんなものを入れて複雑な味にするよりも、よりシンプルにして一番馴染みやすい、これぞかんずりっていう味を作るために、どんどん消去法で削っていって、 そして最終的にはその唐辛子と米麹と柚子と食塩というこの4つだけの原材料になったということです。
And the once humble Myoko household condiment has reached international fame.
出身は新潟の上越市になりますね。子供の頃から慣れ親しんでいる食材でございます。まずはお刺身などにつけてそのまま食べることによってコクを与えたりだとか、旨味を変えてくれるもの。
However, when he uses it for meat dishes, it can reduce any unpleasant smells and an overly fatty taste.
そういう意味で私の中ではいろんな多様した料理に、いいところを生かすこともあれば悪いところを切ってくれる薬味ということで私の中では万能調味料というふうな位置づけにしております。
Only 200,000 tiny bottles of Kanzuri are made every year. But today's struggle to find a deep enough snowy plain will likely continue to impact the next generation of Kanzuri makers. In January and February 2024, Niigata Prefecture saw only 25 centimetres of snow, down from 93 centimetres in 2023. In 2020, hardly any snow fell, and snowfall over the last 7 decades has generally been on the decline. This fluctuation means Akihito can't rely on enough snow to bleach the peppers. Finding reliable land is a problem for producers of the most expensive foods all over the world. In Colombia, local producers of indigenous panela, a pricey unrefined sugar, have moved to higher and higher altitudes to make the product, and that means they have to walk further to sell it. Droughts in Kashmir have left fields yielding significantly less saffron, the most expensive spice on the market. Fewer viable fields mean some producers are forced to sell their land. In Spain, warmer waters are pushing baby eel fishers to change shores more frequently so they can catch enough to sell.
Pues no va bien la cosa. Bueno, se está acercando la hora, ¿eh? Vamos a cambiar de playa.
So too in Niigata, where Akihito will have to continue searching for the right location, making production, and in turn the bottle of Kanzuri, more costly. However, he isn't giving up on snow bleaching, because it wouldn't be a traditional Niigata Kanzuri without it, especially since demand for the paste has grown 20% in the last 20 years. Finding enough snow is the first problem. Another is having enough peppers. Kanzuri is made from the local togarashi pepper. There were once 30 farmers supplying the company with these peppers. Now, Akihito says only 4 to 5 remain. He says the company may soon have to grow every pepper in-house. Importing them, although cheaper, is not an option for Akihito, who says Kanzuri wouldn't taste the same without togarashi peppers from this region.
で、味的にも身厚なので、辛みももちろんあるんですけれども、肉汁も多くて、甘辛で非常に食べやすい唐辛子に変わっていきました。うちで作った商品がこんなところまで、来て、人の手に渡ってですね、やっぱり自分たちもやっぱり感動しますし、それがもう誇りで仕事にも、力も入りますし、同じ新潟県人なんかもやっぱり、そういった私たちに、言葉をくれるっていうのはやはり感動して、この新潟妙高に、で作られた缶詰を誇りだというふうに感じているんだと思います。
Elsewhere in Japan, we find that not all mushrooms are the same. Growers have to wait to see which sprouts will become the rare and expensive white flower shiitake.
まず、木にドリルで穴を開けます。そしてそこにこの椎茸の菌が、入ったプラグ、これを穴に入れて、約2年。
This process is known as inoculation. And at this stage, there's no telling which sprouts will become white flower shiitake.
そして2年経ったら椎茸が毎年春と秋、生えてくるようになります。
That's how long it takes for the fungus to spread throughout the log and start sprouting harvestable caps. Each log produces mushrooms for about 6 years.
すべての栄養を吸ってしまいました。なので、あとはもうこういうふうにボロボロと、土に帰っていくだけです。
原料を他から探してくるんじゃなくて、やっぱ自分の近くの家の近くからずっとローテーションしながらずっとこの栽培を続けていっている。
This species of tree is not only plentiful, but apparently delicious.
で特にそのクヌギの木っていうのは甘い、樹液を持っているので、非常にそのなんて言うんでしょう、味わいが良くて、しかも歯ごたえのある椎茸が作れる木です。
Forest-grown mushrooms are at the top of the Shiitake hierarchy. They are more difficult and unpredictable to produce than indoor-grown, which leads to their heftier price tag. Even in the US, the price of forest-grown shiitakes can reach $40 per kilo, while the price of indoor-grown greenhouse shiitakes is only half of that.
小というおかくずで作るやつはやはり味もなければ香りもない。そういった形から言えば原木椎茸というのは出汁も取れますし、香りもいいし、食感もいいし、食べて美味しいというのが。
Then there are the two main types of shiitake based on their shape.
一つはドンコ。ドンコは実が厚くて、縁がしっかり巻いていて、6割で、それから硬芯。硬芯は非常に薄くて。
The top tier version of donko is called hanadonko or white flower. That's the one that fetches that $400 per kilo price tag.
普通の椎茸が柔らかいと、柔らかいとすれば天白はコリコリした食感になりますので、全然食べる感覚が変わってきます。
The difference between a regular donko and a white flower shiitake comes down to the cap. All donko mushrooms will have distinct cracks, but the pattern on a white flower is more dispersed, like this. But to grow any shiitake this way, conditions have to be perfect.
シーズンが来ても雨が少なかったら芽が出ないとか、寒かったら大きくならないとか、雨が降ると大きくなりすぎるとか、いろんなところを気を使いながら。
And white flower caps can't be directly rained on at all. When water gets into those cracks on the surface, it discolors the mushrooms and decreases their value.
だけどこの木の影になっているところ、雨が当たらないところに、いいものが生えていることが多いです。
When they're ready, workers like Naokokai harvest each one by hand. Traditionally, logs are left unprotected in the forest. But growers like Guy Husao started growing mushrooms in an outdoor structure he calls an artificial log yard to gain some control over his environment.
ビンを張って雨が降らないようにするし、雨が少ないとこのスプリンクラーで水を必要な水分を与えて、強制的に椎茸を発生させる、そういう施設です。
Even with this limited control, the recent unpredictable climate is affecting how much he can harvest. In 2010, Guy Husao left his life in Osaka to join his father on this shiitake mushroom farm.
私の父親が10万から15万の間でずっとやってたんですが、私が帰ってきた時人数も多いし、ということで倍にしましてね、30万個ぐらいを。
But a combination of his parents' aging and an increasingly unpredictable climate caused the farm's productivity to shrink again.
で今現在は10万から15万の間でまた父がやってた頃の量で今やってる時代ですね。だから稼ぐのはやっぱりなかなかこの気候の変動が大きくて昔みたいにやっぱりできないっていうのが最近の状態です。 本当に季節が読めない状態になってきてますので、地球温暖化がもういい。
A smaller yield means fewer white flower shiitakes, which only make up about 8% of Fusao's harvest.
キノコはどれでもじゃあ天白になるのかっていうとなかなか難しい。
White flower, regular donko, and goshin mushrooms are harvested all at once, loaded up in crates or bags, and taken to Sugimoto's processing facility to be sorted, dried, and packaged.
で機械でサイズを分けた後も下の階にある遠赤外線乾燥炉というところで椎茸の水分をコントロール。
Drying shiitakes this way actually amplifies their umami flavor. Dehydration breaks down the cell walls of the mushroom, releasing and concentrating the compounds responsible for their taste. All that flavor remains even after they're rehydrated.
なのでもちろんフレッシュで食べても美味しいんですけど、フレッシュな花どんことその乾燥した花どんこっていうのはおそらく食べ比べるとこんなにも違うのかと驚くと思う。
After the drying process, workers like Eddie Hoshi will hand sort the shiitakes by color, shape, and size. This is where she'll be able to separate the white flower from the rest of the donko.
はい。普通のどんこと違って普通のどんこはこちらなんですけど、こっちは模様があるんですけど、花どんこは天白どんこは、このようにこの白の割合が多いものを選んで、おさの色と縁の巻きとあと大きさで選んでます。どんこでも、模様があって天白でも中のおさの色が悪かったり、こういうふうに縁がしっかり巻いているものじゃないと、どんこにはならないので、それだけ貴重な、花どんこ、天白どんこになります。
White flower mushrooms must be flawless. And Sugimoto is picky about the other types of shiitake the company processes too. Sorters will filter out any mushrooms that have aesthetic flaws.
ここでこういうふうにちょっと色が悪いもの、それから、割れてしまっているもの、そういったものをここで、取り除いていきます。
These mushrooms will be used in other products like the company's shiitake powder. It's used by chefs all over the world as a natural umami booster.
広まってますよね、実際ね。椎茸の戻し方、食べ方を知らないというのがもう根本的になって、若い人がちょっと椎茸離れ。
Even though demand is slowing in Japan, the global appetite for mushrooms is steadily growing. And shiitakes in particular are sought after for their perceived health benefits. So, Sugimoto has been increasingly tapping into international markets.
ですので今後この需要が伸びるかというとそこはちょっと非常に難しいんですけど、ただ日本ではそうですけど、香港それから台湾ですとその花どんこっていうのはものすごく昔今も
ね、そこでやっぱ海外の方にこういうパイプをつないでいただいて、安定価格も安定してきたということで非常に助かっている状態ですね。今とそのやる気が起きているという状態ですかね、今のところ。
According to the Mushroom Council, over the past decade in the US, there's been a more than 100% increase in specialty mushroom sales, primarily driven by shiitake.
They're so versatile, they're just so amazing, and you can do so much with them.
Ravi De Rossi is the co-owner of Third Kingdom, a mushroom-centric restaurant in New York City. Most of its mushrooms are sourced locally, but white flower calls for special circumstances.
We get it flown in from Japan, and when they have them, they'll ship us a few. We'll run it as a special. We'll invite just like some of our special regular customers and let them know what we're doing.
Regular donko also shows up on the menu from time to time. Executive chef Juan Pajarito dreams up the dishes like this one, prepared steak and onion style.
Diría que un tipo de artista, jugar con los hongos.
While donko shiitakes are in season, he'll reach for them over thin Koshin ones when he wants an amplified experience.
Un shiitake normal, sí. Vemos la diferencia de carnosidad que tiene ese hongo. Wildflower shiitake emulsion es un poco, como digo, más carnoso. El sabor es más intenso, más fuerte al shiitake regular. Esa es la diferencia, pero le digo, el unami que tiene es algo muy diferente al regular shiitake.
So leaning into the international market is key for companies like Sugimoto.
出たっていうのはがスタートですけど、今僕らが海外にその原木栽培の椎茸を紹介してすごく強く感じているのは、絶対に真似されないというすごい強みを持っている。